What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto x Fem Itachi Sasuke bashing? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. No one knew. That was how Sasuke wanted it to be. No one knew of the relationship between the two male members of Team 7. To the rest of the world, they looked like two shinobis who genuinely despised one another. To Sakura and Kakashi, they looked like two individuals who found it difficult to admit the closeness of their friendship. Too much pride in the both of them, thought the female and the eldest member of Team 7. But to Naruto and Sasuke, they were lovers. Had been for the past 7 months. It was a year since Naruto had returned from his 3-year-long training trip with Jiraiya and 9 months since Sasuke had killed Orochimaru and returned to the Leaf. The members of Team 7 were all Chunins now. Naruto had been promoted immediately after his return and Sakura in the Chunin exams held 2 years ago. When Uchiha Sasuke first returned, he was confined to prison for 2 months. His chakra had been sealed and he had been subjected to repeated torture and interrogation by Konoha's elite Junin, Morino Ibiki. To the question as to why he returned, Sasuke had one answer. Itachi would be after Naruto for the Kyuubi. This was a concrete fact as the Kyuubi was an integral to the Akatsuki's final goal. Sasuke told Ibiki he simply figured that if he stayed close enough to Naruto, he could not only protect the Jinchuriki from his brother, but also kill off said brother at the same time. He also reminded the council that he had, in fact, done them a favor by killing Orochimaru. Was the snake not the one who invaded Konoha and attacked the Sandaime? Sasuke's theories and defense stood the test of 2 months. It also helped that he was the last carrier of the Sharingan that was loyal to Konoha. Sakura and Naruto, and to a certain extent Kakashi vouched for Sasuke. And the Uchiha prodigy was back in his hometown. For Sasuke, the past 6 months had been good. The transition from Oto society to Konoha society was smoother than expected, with the noted similarity that he was treated like the greatest thing since sliced bread on both sides. He had a blonde body in his bed and the general adulation of most of the civilian and shinobi populace. The only people who disliked him were Kiba, Choji, Shikamaru, Neji and Shino. However, those 5 had always been more of Naruto's friends than his, he mused. Sasuke and Naruto had gotten together quite simply. It had been a week after Sasuke's discharge from the prison and he was resting at the Uchiha mansion. It had to be expected that the first knock on the door, the first person to enter his house would be Naruto. As he served his visitor and best friend tea, Sasuke mused on how Naruto had changed. Taller he most definitely was. Naruto had lost most of his baby fat and was now a lean, well-built ninja. However, one thing the years could not change was the blue in his eyes. Sasuke remembered how often he had tried to hunt for the same blue in his years at Sound, searching the eyes of men and women alike. He had never found it. However, he had found a similar shade in the eyes of another blonde shinobi. Sasuke had promptly taken in this shinobi as his lover. Orochimaru evinced no disagreement. On the contrary, he had seemed to be amused. It had been a minor matter to dispose of his lover when he left Oto. Sasuke couldn't recall the look of horror on his lover's face, nor the pained look with which he died. In fact, in a rare moment of self-evaluation, Sasuke admitted to himself that the only reason he had taken this lover was because of his similarity to Naruto. His personality and mannerisms were none of Sasuke's interest. He did not even know if his lover had a family or what his favorite color was. All he remembered was how he would climax inside the man and wonder if Naruto was as tight as he was. Their first meeting after he returned was awkward. Both Sasuke and Naruto concurred. Similarities and dissimilarities were taken note of and an aura of tension persisted. Naruto was nervous and Sasuke was cool. It all changed when Sasuke called his friend by their once childhood name of Dobi, and Naruto started yelling in outrage. At this, things had gotten somehow back to normal and they continued insulting each other, as if Sasuke hadn't left in the first place. Naruto asked Sasuke why he returned and Sasuke gave him the same answer he gave Ibiki and the council. At this, a fleeting look of disappointment passed across Naruto's face but was immediately replaced with yet another insult. Hiding behind a veil of normalcy was sad, Sasuke thought. Their second meeting was a bit more public, in Ichiraku's. The entire Rookie 9, Team Guy and all of their senseis were around. All of them had changed, yet Sakura and Ino had not lost their old affliction for Sasuke. Sakura was noticeably nicer to Naruto and he had quite obviously gotten over his crush on her. They seemed to be good friends, them and the guy Sai, whom Sasuke immediately hated. He hated the idea that he had been replaced so easily and that Naruto seemed to treat his replacement much the same way he treated Sasuke himself. Shikamaru and Neji were noticeably hostile to Sasuke and seemed somewhat protective of Naruto. Sasuke understood that they could discern his predatory gaze on Naruto and didn't like it one bit. Everything else seemed to be normal. Kakashi had his usual orange book. However, his smiles at Sasuke didn't seem to reach his eyes. Guy and Lee droned on about youth. Choji munched on his chips and Shino just sat without saying anything. As Rookie 9 and Team Guy meetings go, it went reasonably well. Sasuke went home and trained in the privacy of the Uchiha town. Another reason to return was the wealth of Uchiha jutsus in the library that Orochimaru could definitely not have thought him. After a hot shower and a quiet dinner, Sasuke slept, plotting on how he could make the move on Naruto. Flashback. It was nighttime in Oto, and Sasuke had just finished learning how to summon. Manda had appeared before him and officially accepted him as his subordinate. He trudged off towards his chambers after commanding Kabuto to send in Yuki. As Yuki waltzed in, Sasuke grabbed him and placed a passionate kiss on his lips. There was no love in the kiss, just a fierce demand and a hungry need. Tongues interlocked as Sasuke dominated and plundered the blonde's mouth. He explored the cavern as if searching for something yet not knowing what the thing was. Strip, commanded Sasuke as he threw off his own clothes. Yuki stripped and Sasuke brought his hands up to the naked body that lay before him. He roughly pinched Yuki's ass and took one of them in his mouth. His hand snaked down to the blonde's erection and pumped it a few times. He threw the bottle of lube towards Yuki and watched the other man finger himself. The process only turning him on a lot more. After Yuki was fully prepared, Sasuke mounted him. A few quick thrusts aimed at Yuki's prostate and both of them reached oblivion. He immediately pulled himself out and ordered his lover to leave. Flashback ends. Now Sasuke wanted only one thing, Naruto. And he was sure he was going to get it. He had always gotten what he wanted in life and Naruto would be no exception. Naruto had always strived for some sort of acknowledgement. He had always wanted people to praise him and look up to him. He got that when Iruka supported him in front of Mizuki. When his teammates and sensei of Team 7 noted him as a part of their team and cared for him in their own way. When the other Rookie 9 started going against their parents' words and started thinking of Naruto as a friend they could begin to trust. When Ero Sennin and Tsunade acknowledged him as being capable to be the next Hokage. That was definitely the greatest praise of all. To have two of the legendary Sannin acknowledge you was not something everyone achieved. Even the glares, stares and jeers of the villagers had lessened somewhat. Most of the shinobi community now wholeheartedly accepted him, and seeing this, the villagers started treating him like any other ninja. However, Naruto was not happy. He was wondering why. Life was great. All his friends were great. He had in fact made many other friends. He wasn't happy though. Everyone precious to him knew next to nothing about him. They knew not his hate for ramen. Most people would have bet their souls on his passion for it. While Naruto had found people who genuinely liked him for what he was, he hadn't found anyone who would listen to him. He hadn't found anyone to confess that orange wasn't really his favorite color, it was just the means to draw attention. He hadn't found anyone that he could muster up the will and confess that Kyuubi wasn't what she seemed to be. That she had trained him in secret for all his life. That his fast eating, relentless exuberance and seeming lack of manners were all part of an elaborate charade. For though Naruto's mind was powerful and his body strong, his heart longed for love and acceptance. And he had tried to gain it the only way he could. By being loud. And after having finally gained it with the help of his mask, he was wary of pulling down the mask for good. For almost 16 years, his mask had been his identity. Pulling it down would be like stripping naked. People might once again start to hate him, and more than ever, Naruto was afraid of hate. His deepest fear was the fear of being alone. It was what he went home to every night, and he sincerely longed for a full home with family. So Naruto considered himself the happiest person in the world when a certain Uchiha returned home. Sasuke had been someone who understood loneliness and pain. Though this shared realization was rarely voiced, it bonded them. However, Kyuubi had always disliked Sasuke for reasons she would not admit and prevented Naruto from growing closer to him. However, when Sasuke returned, Naruto sensed something different about him. Kyuubi had gifted her vessel with an infinitely accurate sense of smell, and Naruto could easily smell another man on his friend. Naruto started to question their bonds of friendship when Sasuke mentioned not of this man. Naruto was reluctant to bring it up himself and reasoned that Sasuke might have broken off a relationship he didn't want to talk about. However, alarm bells started to ring when Naruto suddenly found himself the focus of Sasuke's attention. Sasuke seemed to brush against him a lot more, put his arm around his shoulder casually and began to talk to him in a slightly more flirtatious manner. Neither Kakashi nor Sakura noticed these changes. The Kunoichi was now a medic nin rivaled by only the likes of Tsunade and Shizune. But she was still a novice in matters of the heart. Her old infatuation for Sasuke persisted, though Naruto's infatuation for her had long dried up. And though Kakashi had become stronger than ever thanks to his Mangekyo, he was too caught up in regretting for past mistakes and trying to see if Sasuke was still a traitor. Kakashi had felt great regret when Sasuke left and considered his attack on Naruto a personal betrayal. Thus Sasuke's new behavior towards Naruto was something noticed and acknowledged only by the two of them. Their first kiss may have been accidental, but their second kiss definitely was not. It took place the third time they met. It was the usual Team 7 meeting place and Sasuke got there first. Naruto followed him. They had talked and exchanged their usual barrage of insults, when Naruto felt Sasuke getting closer and closer to him until only a few inches separated their faces. Sasuke then tilted his face to reach past those few inches and met his lips with Naruto's. Naruto remembered turning bright red and spluttering incoherently. For once, his real self mirrored his mask. However, that ended then and there as Sakura made her presence known. From then on, it was smooth sailing history. The kisses flowed smoothly and were followed by handjobs, then blowjobs and finally full out. In a period of a month, Sasuke and Naruto had gone all the way. Now they were almost 6 months into their relationship and not a single soul knew. Naruto sang as he made his way to the Uchiha estate. The villagers now favored him with kind looks and polite smiles, and he replied in kind. It was a Saturday night and there were no missions for 2 whole days. Sasuke and him had decided to have dinner at the Uchiha mansion and spend the night there. He frowned when he recalled some glaring holes in their relationship. Sasuke hadn't mentioned one word about his ex-boyfriend and Naruto was reluctant to bring it up. He felt that Sasuke might have his reasons. After all, he had many things to admit to Sasuke himself. He hadn't yet let Sasuke see behind his mask, and that fact was worrying him. Was there no trust in their relationship? They hadn't sat down and had a good talk about their respective lives. So far, it was just and merry bantering that friends were used to. However, whenever Naruto thought of revealing his true nature to Sasuke, he felt reluctant. Maybe because it was because of the fact that Sasuke hadn't trusted him yet either. And then there was Kyuubi. The fox was quite adamant in her opposition to the relationship. She claimed that Sasuke had neither the power nor the character to be Naruto's mate. But Naruto could be as stubborn as the demon herself. For the first time in his life, he had found someone who accepted all of him. Someone who made love to him and someone who wholeheartedly acknowledged him. To him it was nirvana. Naruto never had had warm arms to wrap around him or a body to sleep with. As far as he could remember, he was alone. The feeling of belonging was utterly new to him and he was basking in the new sensations he had just discovered. There was the guilt of keeping something from Sakura, especially considering her infatuation with Sasuke, but for once in his life Naruto decided to be selfish. At this, Kyuubi grew quiet and warned him not to fall in love. However, Naruto didn't know if he wasn't already in love. As Naruto entered the austere mansion, long arms pulled him into an embrace as warm and wet lips found his. "Sasuke," whispered Naruto as they kissed, tongues battling against each other for dominance. Sasuke tasted like green apples, sour and sweet at the same time. After his return from the sound, Sasuke had gotten only more gorgeous. His body was built well and he was endowed with lean muscles. He was 6 feet tall, a good 6 inches taller than Naruto. His face was still blessed with ethereal good looks and his eyes had only grown darker. Sasuke's hands moved all over Naruto's body as he strove to rid them both of their clothes. He began nibbling on Naruto's pulse and bit down harshly to leave a hickey. Naruto's moans only incited him on and he took a pink into his mouth. "Oh God," gasped Naruto as the Uchiha sucked on his till it was stiff and erect. He then moved on to the other, wrapping his tongue around it and pulling vigorously. Naruto felt good, yet he felt as though something was missing. "Like I'm with the wrong person," he thought absent-mindedly. However, he was jolted out of his thoughts when Sasuke's erection came in contact with his. Naruto groaned as their crotches rubbed against each other repeatedly. "Why so passive, Dobi?" asked Sasuke huskily. "Suck me," he commanded. Naruto got on his knees and placed his mouth close to Sasuke's groin. He licked the slit and wrapped his hands around Sasuke's throbbing member. Sasuke hissed as Naruto's mouth enveloped him. Naruto began deep-throating Sasuke as the raven thrust into his mouth. When Sasuke began to feel that he was close, he immediately took himself out of his lover's mouth. The Uchiha then took out the lube and coated his fingers with the sticky substance. He prepared Naruto with 3 fingers, probing around till he found Naruto's sweet spot. He was rewarded by a soft cry of ecstasy. Sasuke smirked and positioned his member in front of Naruto's entrance. With one firm thrust, he dove in. After assuring that Naruto was well adjusted, Sasuke began to thrust in him repeatedly. It didn't take long for Naruto to start screaming out in pleasure as Sasuke hit his prostate over and over again. Sasuke's hand was now pumping his neglected member. With one final cry, he came, spilling his seed all over their stomachs. Sasuke followed him, releasing himself inside Naruto. They lay spent, as Sasuke pulled himself out. After a few minutes, the two went to shower, in separate bathrooms. When Naruto got out, Sasuke was cooking dinner. They ate in silence, Naruto being in deep thought. "Any reason you're so quiet, Dobi?" asked Sasuke. "Nah, replied Naruto. "This food sucks, Teme. Why can't we have ramen?" he whined. Sasuke rolled his eyes. "Only a Dobi like you would eat something so unhealthy," he retorted. "At least I don't have a stick up my ass," shot back Naruto. And so on and so forth, they insulted each other till Naruto got sick of it and marched back home. He had a lot to think about. Why couldn't he and Sasuke ever hold a normal conversation? They were too competitive, always looking for a chance to upstage each other. Naruto couldn't help feeling vaguely disappointed. Is this what a relationship is all about? He thought to himself. Surely there must be more. He was going home to an empty bed once again. The first time Naruto thought he smelled Haruno's Sakura on Sasuke, he brushed it off as a mere coincidence. It was 6 months into their relationship and that was good. Well, it was the only he had had. He should have thought something was wrong when Sakura was looking more chipper than usual. However, he attributed it to the fact that her training under Tsunade must be going pretty well. After all, he mused the smell wasn't even strong enough. Neither his mask nor his real self thought anything of it. However, Kyuubi had been disturbed and cursed her kit's naivete when it came to relationships. He didn't even notice when Sakura and Sasuke started to spend more time together. At this phase, Naruto was more concerned with revealing his true self. He decided to start with someone he could trust above all else, his Hokage. So on a Monday morning, he strode over to Tsunade's office. Hardly noticing anything wrong when Sakura was hanging onto Sasuke's arm and giggling. After reaching her office, he immediately sealed off the doors and windows. Tsunade had grown alarmed when he shut her up with a cheery, "Relax, Ba-chan." She had stared at him and asked him what the hell he was been up to. Naruto started to talk to her. He told her about this past and about Kyuubi's real reason for attacking Konoha. Tsunade was at first skeptical. She even grew alarmed when Naruto summoned Kyuubi out. However, the fox demon and Naruto convinced the Hokage about Kyuubi's lack of malevolence towards Konoha. He then told Tsunade about his literal and figurative mask. The mask he always wore to ensure he stayed safe while gaining everyone's attention. Least to say, Tsunade was shocked. The real surprise came when Naruto revealed to the Sannin that the Kyuubi was training him. At this, Tsunade demanded to know her little brother's current level and they arranged to spar at a certain time later on. Naruto also requested her to keep his information private and confidential. He wanted others to know about him only when the time was right. It was midday, during her lunch hour, that they sparred. After being subjected to a few broken bones, Tsunade was forced to heal herself and take Naruto seriously. It was an even match. Tsunade's age and experience were rivaled by Naruto's stamina and power. In the end, it was Naruto who won as Tsunade suffered form chakra exhaustion. The famous medic Nin then insisted that Naruto be promoted to Anbu. When he protested and cited his teammates as the reason, Tsunade told to make time for both positions. Naruto grinned and took it as a challenge. So it was of no surprise that he had not enough time to notice Sakura and Sasuke's growing closeness. He was continuously doing A and S class missions, training with the rest of his Chunin team, hanging out with his friends and making time for his boyfriend. Said boyfriend was smart enough to conceal his tracks. So Naruto lived on blissfully in ignorance. Sasuke had always been multi-talented. He had always gotten more than enough, regardless of whether he wanted it or not. And he wanted different things for different reasons. After all, Sasuke had a lot to think about. Sasuke wanted Naruto. No, he needed Naruto. Naruto had always been around either in the periphery or in the center of Sasuke's life. And the closer he got to the center, the better Sasuke's life was. Naruto was like a drug and Sasuke was hooked. Naruto tasted of fresh juicy strawberries. He had a great body that was shaped tantalizingly and moved poetically. Sun-kissed skin that sparkled with health and goodwill. Even after Sasuke had repeatedly fucked him, Naruto's eyes retained an essence of innocence in them. His eyes were virgin eyes. Eyes that only saw good and retained good. His eyes weren't like Sasuke's eyes. Naruto's body was the only one that could make Sasuke come so hard. And Naruto was one person Sasuke grudgingly respected. Yet, for all this Naruto had one drawback. He was male. Being male, he couldn't bear kids. And more than ever, Sasuke needed to revive his clan. Haruno Sakura had none of this. She had pink hair and as far as Sasuke was concerned, she was plain. Yet she was devoted to Sasuke. She was also a strong and smart kunoichi. And most important, female. She could give him his clan. Hence to Sasuke it was clear what he should do. Break up with Naruto and pursue Sakura. However, he just couldn't bring himself to let go of Naruto. So he started to go out with both of them. Sakura had been thrilled when Sasuke finally responded to one of her many invitations. They began hanging out on a regular basis. Sakura would talk and Sasuke would zone out. He would reply infrequently with a yes or no or HN and that would suffice. It was enough to send her into throes of delight. And Sasuke made sure Naruto did not suspect anything. In fact, Sasuke thought that Naruto was hiding something himself. He always seemed to be running off somewhere. The first time the two had was also the Uchiha's first time with a woman. Though he found Naruto to be tighter, Sasuke wasn't disappointed either. Sakura had a great body and if he made an effort, its sight could arouse Sasuke. After all, he was 16 years old and living on hormones. At such times, he purposely put Naruto out of his mind. Sasuke was content. He had a lover and a future wife. The night Sasuke formally asked Sakura to be his girlfriend was the night Naruto finally asked him if anything was going on between himself and the kunoichi. Naruto had smelled Sakura on his Sasuke to such an extent that he couldn't ignore it anymore. One usual Team 7 morning, the scent was coupled with the scent of. Before Sasuke could reply, Sakura piped up. "Yep, Sasuke-kun asked me to be his girlfriend," she chirped merrily. Naruto stood frozen. He couldn't react. Kyuubi temporarily took over and stated his congratulations to both of them as Sasuke looked on awkwardly. It was 8 p.m. when Sasuke came over. Naruto had broken down and cried enough. His eyes were red and puffy when he opened the door. Sasuke looked exasperated. "Look Dobi," he intoned. "What we have can't go on forever. I have a clan to revive. It's not as if you actually liked me, is it?" Naruto couldn't believe it. "Yes Sasuke," he whispered. "I actually liked you. I liked you, you cheater," he screamed, tears pouring down his face once again. "I cared for you. It's obvious I shouldn't have however." He finished trembling with shock, anger, confusion and betrayal. Sasuke remained impassive. "Naruto," he finally said. "We weren't in a relationship. We were just friends with benefits." Naruto stood staring at his with shock. Then he laughed bitterly. "Is that what you told your lover back in Sound?" he asked. Sasuke froze. "How do you know about that?" he replied angrily. Naruto smiled sadly. "I have heightened senses, Sasuke. Courtesy of Kyuubi. I could smell him on you. I even smelled Sakura on you, but I trusted you enough to doubt you," he said. They stood in silence for what seemed like hours. "I'm leaving," Naruto finally said. "I'm going to leave Konoha for at least 2 years. I almost gave you my heart just to see you walk over it. I'm not interested in staying and watching you flirt with Sakura. I want to be far, far away when you get married." Sasuke looked at him disbelievingly. "Are you going to be a missing nin just for this dobi?" he asked. "You'll find out soon," Naruto replied. Sasuke frowned. Naruto sighed. "Get back to your girlfriend Sasuke," he said, literally pushing Sasuke out. The Uchiha left without a backward glance. The next morning, Kakashi appeared on the bridge 3 hours late. Naruto still hadn't come and Sasuke was growing more worried by the second. They decided to stop by at the Hokage's office before beginning training. Tsunade sighed. Late last night, Naruto had appeared in front of her teary-eyed and begging for a long-term mission. After hearing the reason, she had thinned her lips and allotted him one as a spy in a country far away. "Uzumaki Naruto is currently on an S-class mission," she told Team 7's other 3 members. They looked confused. "An S-class mission with whom, Tsunade-sama? And for how long?" Kakashi asked, puzzled. "He kept it a secret from you," Tsunade replied. "But Naruto is actually Anbu. He's on an extended 2-year reconnaissance mission with Hyuga Neji." There were noises of outrage. "Naruto and Anbu?" asked Sakura disbelievingly. "That's impossible." Recalling Naruto's pain last night, Tsunade gave her student a cold look. "Ninjas are always supposed to look underneath the underneath," she reminded Sakura, who shut up immediately. Kakashi wasn't satisfied. "Why didn't he tell us before he left?" he asked the Godem. "There was no time," she replied simply. "Now I suggest you get on with whatever you were supposed to do." As they walked to the training ground, Sasuke couldn't help but feel shocked. Naruto was an Anbu and he had hidden that from Sasuke? And he wouldn't see the blonde loudmouth for 2 years, a time that suddenly seemed dauntingly long. As he found Sakura latched onto his arm and Kakashi surveying them amusedly, he suddenly wished that he could fast-forward time to 2 years in the future. Love and luck, thought Haruno Sakura, were fickle things. You think you might be in love with someone your whole life, and then suddenly you start questioning the very basics of love. You start wondering if the two of you are really meant to be. Your heart continues to beat for the other person, but he hardly notices you. He is, at best, polite to you. Then you start to wonder, can love sometimes be only one-sided? Can you fall for someone who is incapable of loving you? It was 2 years. 2 years since Naruto had left for an A-rank mission in the country of the waterfalls. Sakura and Sasuke had started going out in the beginning of those 2 years. At first, Sasuke had seemed genuinely nice and interested in her. However, it all changed after Naruto left. The rest of Team 7 realized something important. Naruto was the glue that held them together. While Kakashi was no doubt the sensei, Sasuke the genius and Sakura the kunoichi they both liked, Naruto was air. His very existence brought a fresh breath of wind into their lives and made them greet each new mission with energy. Now, things in Team 7 were humdrum. It could be readily admitted that all of the 3 members were waiting for the return of their Uzumaki. Sakura's and Sasuke's relationship was going on as well as any relationship with Sasuke could. Sasuke had even proposed to her a few months ago. However, they agreed to delay their wedding till the Kyuubi vessel returned to Konoha. All their friends were somewhat pleased at the happy news, though the Sasuke groupies were admittedly distraught. Ino had gotten together with Choji, Temari with Shika, and most surprisingly Gaara with Hinata. The last of the 3 unions raised many eyebrows in both Konoha and Suna, but the Hyugas gave the green light. So Hinata now lived in Suna and occasionally came by to visit. It was decided, in a decisive break of tradition, that Neji would now head the Hyuga clan. Neji had returned a month ago and now, most of Konoha were awaiting the return of their blonde. Civilian and shinobi alike commented on how quiet the town had become since Naruto's departure. "It is only when you're in the shade that you realize how refreshing a ray of sunshine really is," was their general consensus. It was the night of Naruto's 18th birthday that Tsunade decided to make public his heritage. The Kyuubi festival was also held the same night, and most of Konoha's denizens were out, decked in fine kimonos. Most of the populace was gathered in the town square and waiting for the Hokage's annual address. As Tsunade stepped on the podium, there was quiet as everyone waited for their leader to speak. And speak she did. She told them that their precious fourth lived on, in the blood of Uzumaki Naruto. How Uzumaki Urashi had sealed the Kyuubi into his own son, to save the village from certain destruction. In this way, Naruto as the carrier of the Kyuubi was every bit as great a hero as their fourth was. She reminded them of how they had treated the son of the very man they much adored. Widespread silence greeted her announcements, and even the most hardened of shinobis had expressions of guilt on their faces. She noted that though the news was kept secret for both Naruto's and Konoha's safety, the truth could be denied no more. And people began to make the connections: the blonde hair, blue eyes, just some of the few. Their shared affinity to the wind element, their shared passion for pranks and desire to become Hokage. The citizens of Konoha were shaking their heads and wondering how they could be so oblivious. However, it was her second announcement that really brought down the house. It was a public declaration of the innocence of Uchiha Itachi that absolved him of any involvement with the Uchiha massacre. At this, a furious Sasuke had to be restrained by more than 5 Anbu and a distressed fiancé before he could kill the Hokage. She refused to present any proof to the general populace and merely informed them that Itachi had joined Akatsuki as a spy for Konoha. Now that his work had been completed, he would be returning home. Her statement was corroborated by the evidence of Hyuga Hiyashi and the present Anbu captain commander. It was almost midnight before shocked citizens of the Leaf finally made their way home, mulling the two extremely shocking pieces of news they had received. A raging Sasuke who refused to believe the news had to be detained and reprimanded before Sakura dragged him home. The next day was a bright and cheery morning, Haruno Sakura thought. Sasuke hadn't slept much of the night before and was still pacing furiously in the living room. His chakra was almost spiked to the full and its killer intent was easily palpable. Sakura tried to calm him with some breakfast, before a summon from the Hokage's office arrived for them. When the duo stepped out on airway, they could notice signs of excitement and unrest in the air. Villagers and shinobi alike were gossiping and digesting the two extremely juicy and extremely shocking pieces of news they had received. Sakura and Sasuke were shown into the Godaime's chambers and asked to sit down. A figure was presented before them, a hooded cloaked figure that revealed himself to be Uchiha Itachi. Maintaining an extraordinary degree of self-control, Sasuke requested proof of his brother's innocence. Itachi looked at his brother coolly. Uto, I was with Sandaime-sama, Hyuga Hiyashi and the Anbu commander when the news of the massacre was brought to us. There was no way I could be in 2 places at the same time. There are records in the Hokage's office verifying this and I suggest you go over them. Sasuke couldn't just stomach it. This was the brother he had vowed to kill for over 8 years. This was the brother he had hated day after day. This was the goal he had been working towards for nearly half his life, and all of a sudden the goal had disappeared. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He settled for doing neither and adopting a passive face. His emotions were threatening to bubble up and overload, but Sasuke kept it in and asked them if they knew whom the true perpetrator of the massacre was. Shisui, Itachi uttered. His head body was a blood clone. It disappeared out of existence about 3 hours after the massacre. He acquired the Mangekyo probably after killing his parents and it aided him in disposing off the rest of the clan. During my days at Akatsuki, I was allowed to use my free time to hunt for Shisui. He is now dead, killed by me. He has been dead for 3 years. Sasuke couldn't take it anymore. With an animalistic scream, he lunged at his brother, taking his katana out. However, Itachi was too quick for him and sidestepped, avoiding the blow. Why? He screamed. Why was not I told the truth? I've suffered for 8 years Aniki, trying to do anything to hunt you down, and now I find out just how much was hidden for me. Why didn't you take me with you? Or trust me? Itachi remained silent. Joining the Akatsuki was a mission, he replied in a slightly softer voice. It was imperative that I take the blame and join them as a missing nin. I'm sorry the truth had to be hidden from you for so long, that was definitely not my wish. In fact, I hypothesized that this might only drive you to become stronger, which it did. There was a silence and then Tsunade dismissed the two younger people after reminding them that Itachi was now the head of the Uchiha clan and would be residing at the mansion. She requested the elder Uchiha to stay, since she had matters to discuss with him. He returns in a few weeks Itachi-san, she said. You brother and Sakura are already engaged, however they will get married probably after you do. When is my wedding going to be Hokage-sama? He asked emotionlessly. In 3 months probably. Let Naruto move into your place as soon as he returns, since the both of you need to get to know each other better. And remember Itachi, she continued. Naruto has had as hard a life as you have, if not harder. I'm sure you do not welcome this engagement but do not make it harder for Naruto than it already is. The rest of town shall be notified some time after Naruto arrives. Till then I'm sure you have a lot of settling in to do and clan matters to attend to. At this she hesitated. I shouldn't be telling you this, but I'm sure as Naruto's future husband you have a right to know. One of his main reasons for leaving Konoha was because of your brother. At this Itachi raised a finely shaped eyebrow. His lips thinned when he heard of Naruto's affair with Sasuke. They're over now? He asked cautiously. I don't want to go through this if Naruto-kun still has feelings for my Otuto. At this Tsunade smiled. Sasuke is engaged to Sakura now and Naruto is not as immature as most think he is. I have been in touch with him these past 2 years and he has fully recovered from the heartbreak. Itachi sighed as he made his way towards the Uchiha mansion, a home he had once abandoned 10 years ago. There were conflicting gazes directed at him. Some were of distrust, others of pity, and some even of adulation. He had a lot of thinking to do and the knowledge that his fiancé and his brother had had a secret relationship was disturbing. Sakura opened the door for him with a hesitant smile. He nodded to her and to Sasuke who was sitting passively in the living room. Oto, I have news to tell you. He said, I am engaged to be married. Sasuke laughed disbelievingly. Wow. First, I hear that you didn't in fact kill our family when my very eyes told me you did. Then you come home and are reinstated as clan head. Now, you're engaged. Is it anyone I know? He asked rolling his eyes. As a matter of fact it is. Both of you know him in fact, he said looking at Sasuke and Sakura. Him? Asked Sakura frowning. Yes, Itachi replied. At the time of my birth, a contract was signed between 2 clans. In the Kyuubi attack, one of the clans was decimated. However, our Otou-san and the 4th wanted to preserve the contract. It was then passed on as the Hokage's responsibility to make sure the marriage would take place. Now, the Godem had deemed us both to be of age. Also my duties as a spy are over and I will now take a seat on the council. So me and Uzumaki Naruto will get married a few months after he returns. Sasuke and Sakura stood still with their mouths open. Sakura drew in a deep breath while Sasuke was still transfixed with shock. So Itachi-san, you and Naruto are getting married? She inquired hesitatingly. Yes, he said sotto voce. Naruto-kun will be living with us when he returns, in the room next to mine. Now, if you will excuse me, I have matters to attend to. As Itachi exited the room, Sasuke drew in a deep breath and clenched his trembling hands. Sakura on the other hand looked happy and excited. Isn't that nice Sasuke-kun? She cheered merrily. It's ironic, but all the members of Team 7 will be living together. I'm so happy, she continued. Sasuke needed time to think. Too many things had happened and he was unsure how to deal with them all. He tuned Sakura out and stared with unseeing eyes at the television in front of him. He wondered if Itachi knew of what had happened between his Otuto and his fiancée and what he would say if he did. It had been 3 weeks since Itachi had retuned and life in Konoha had returned to its usual pace. Kakashi and other loyal friends of Yondaime's had gotten over their indignation of not being informed of Naruto's legacy beforehand. Itachi was now being looked at normally as an Uchiha could be looked at. The clan activities and duties had been brought up to order and the council had its newest member. Most people now knew of Naruto's supposed return anytime soon, and looked forward to it with excitement and a certain degree of guilt. A room in the Uchiha mansion had been prepared for him and all of his belongings transferred there. Most of the shinobi community now knew of the two engagements, and the marriage of the Uchiha brothers was a conversation starter across Konoha. Naruto's friends had greeted the news skeptically. Since they had no option but to accept the strange pairing, they settled for glaring at Itachi and pondering over whether he was a good choice for the blonde ball of sunshine. Sakura had been delighted. She no longer hated Naruto and looked at him as a dear friend and younger brother. Soon, they would even be related. She spent days planning out how they would live and what other family arrangements would be. Hinata and Gaara were fiercely protective of Naruto. Gaara, being one of the few people who were not scared to death by Itachi's mere presence, took the opportunity to warn the Uchiha to treat his first and best friend well. Hinata added her own 2 cents in a trembling voice. At this, Itachi looked amused. Neji and Shikamaru, as new heads of the Hyuga and Nara clans respectively, also wished the Uchiha a happy marriage with their good friends. The message, "Don't hurt him," was tacit yet fully understood by both sides. The only person who had not yet come to terms with the whole idea was Sasuke. To Sasuke, the past 3 weeks had been infused with a plethora of new ideas. His brother was innocent. He had to deal with that after 8 years of having been convinced otherwise. His brother was also getting married to the only man Sasuke respected and wanted. That was almost as hard to deal with as the first one. When Sasuke asked his brother about the fact that Naruto couldn't bear children, he received no answer, just a raised eyebrow. Sasuke was no unsure of what action he had to take. He wanted Naruto, and he was sure that Naruto would still want him. He decided to stay quiet for now and then confront Naruto as soon as he arrived. It was the twilight when Uzumaki Naruto made his way to the gates of Konoha. Most people were out enjoying the pleasant gust of wind and the sun's fading rays. Konoha hadn't changed much, Naruto mused. The buildings were the same, there were no glaring discrepancies he could notice. However, as he walked towards the Hokage's office, he could notice one important difference. The stairs. At one point, people had almost stopped jeering and mocking at him. Now, the stares were back in full force. He wondered what it was, when his superior hearing caught a few whispered words such as Yondaimi's son, so good-looking, and engaged to Uchiha. He inwardly snickered with amusement. The same people who used to laugh at him when he was a genin now looked at him with admiration and respect. It was almost funny. I suppose the news of my engagement has flown far and wide, he thought ruefully. Naruto entered the Hokage's office and was welcomed by Shizune and the Godem. The 2 women hugged him fiercely. "Looking good, Naruto," said Tsunade with sparkles in her eyes. He smiled. "Thanks, Ba-san," he replied quietly. "The mission was a success and I'll hand over my report sometime tomorrow. It was a shock when you informed me over 2 months ago that I was engaged to Uchiha Itachi. You know the details, don't you? Did you read the record of the agreement signed between the Uchiha and Uzumaki clans?" "Yes. Since I don't have much of a choice, I'll try to deal with it as well as I can." "Thanks, Naruto," she said. "As Hokage, it is my duty to get both of you married. The whole village probably knows by now, since tongues have been wagging endlessly about it. Your belongings have been shifted to the Uchiha mansion. You will be living there from now on. The wedding will be held in a few months, so till then get to know your fiancé better," she finished with a wink. Naruto rolled his eyes. "I'm sure he hates it as much as I do," he muttered. "Well, deal with it, Gaki," she answered. "Remember, Itachi's life has been as difficult as ours. He was forced to take the blame for a crime he did not commit. For 10 years he had no one except himself to depend on. Not only was Akatsuki dangerous in itself, but he was also pursued by hunter nins from the very village he was trying to protect. Not to mention how much Sasuke hated him. He was more lonely than you were. You at least had Iruka, Kakashi, Team 7, the rest of the rookies, Jiraiya and myself. Itachi had no one. At least, give him a chance," she pleaded. Naruto stood in shock. It was true, he realized. He was better off than Itachi. "All right, Ba-chan," he smirked. "I'll try." It was dawn when Naruto knocked on the door of his new house, a sense of déjà vu faintly exuding from the scene. "Come in," a feminine voice shouted. Naruto opened the door and entered the living room, where he was met by 3 upturned faces. "Ohio," he said simply with a smile. Sasuke and Sakura stared at him open-mouthed while Itachi looked on apathetically. Naruto? Asked Sakura haltingly. Is that really you? The one and only, he replied quietly. Hi, Sakura, Sasuke and Itachi-san, he intoned politely. Sakura shrieked and threw herself onto him. Naruto, you're looking so good, she breathed, hugging him. Whatever happened to your whisker marks? She separated herself from him and looked up at Naruto, studying him appraising ly. Naruto was now about 5 feet 8 inches tall. His blonde hair gleamed bright as the sun and now reached up to his waist. The reddish streaks in his hair only added to its beauty. The blue eyes had not lost their hypnotic appeal. Naruto's eyes were now almond-shaped, giving them a slightly exotic look. However, they were as azure as a clear cloudless sky and had the depth of aquamarine waters. A deadly combination of both innocence and intelligence reflected off them. That would attract men and women alike. His face was angular with no trace of baby fat. Full pink lips were carved into a genuine smile and his visage was that of a finely sculpted painting. His body was also a sight to behold. Muscled yet slender, Naruto combined the strength of a man with the grace of a woman. He looked both powerful and vulnerable, like a god of the sun. Sakura blushed. You're hot, she whispered. Thanks, he said, with an amused smile. As for the whisker marks, I fully fused with Kyuubi. So she no longer needs to claim her ownership of me. Hence, they just disappeared. Tcch Dobi, grunted Sasuke looking at him strangely. You could have told us before you left, you know. You do know that you are engaged to my brother, right? He asked meaningfully. Naruto sighed. Let's make a deal, Sasuke. I'll stop calling you Teme and you stop calling me Dobi. I would have mentioned it to you, but I chose not to. It's not as if anyone would miss me, you know? And yes, I am aware of my engagement and that I'm living here from now on. Sasuke snorted. Once a Dobi, always a Dobi. He said, smirking. How do you feel about marrying my brother? Horrified? Not really. It's not as bad as marrying you. No offense, Sakura, he grinned. She laughed. None taken. But be nicer to Sasuke-kun, she warned. Itachi cleared his throat. Naruto-kun, let me take you to your room, he said. You can freshen up and then have dinner. Have all of you eaten? He asked. No, I haven't even started cooking, answered Sakura dolefully. Naruto laughed. Tell you what, Sakura. I'll cook tonight after I shower. You can cook? Snorted Sasuke disbelievingly. Naruto threw him an annoyed glance. In fact, yes. Why else would I offer? He said sarcastically. Looking forward to it, winked Sakura. Itachi lightly touched his hand. Come, Naruto-kun. Naruto followed Itachi in silence. Neither of them said anything as they made their way through the mansion. Naruto had so much to say, so much to ask, but in the face of Itachi's elegance and sophistication he was struck dumb. Itachi stopped by a large room that had some boxes in it. That room is yours. It is right next to mine. You will probably be staying there for the next 3 months. If you need anything, you can ask me. Naruto nodded. Thanks, Itachi-san. I will be down shortly and get dinner ready. Itachi looked at him for a second and their eyes met. We will talk about the details of our parents' contract tomorrow, Naruto-kun, he said and exited the room. Naruto flopped down on his bed and sighed. I have a dinner to make for my family, he thought wonderingly, the word family being a strange and foreign concept to him. It's the first time in my life that I am cooking for someone else. Naruto showered and put on a pair of shorts and a blue shirt that complemented his eyes. He then made his way down into the kitchen. Sasuke and Sakura were still in the living room. Sasuke just staring moodily into the distance and Sakura trying to engage in conversation with him. They both looked up when Naruto entered. He ignored them and made his way into the kitchen. What to make, he thought tiredly. Let's see, traditional food is best for tonight. Soon delicious smells wafted into the living room. In less than 30 minutes, dinner was ready. Naruto set the table and then entered the living room. Sasuke, Sakura, dinner is ready, he said. It really smells good, Naruto, she said and went into the dining room. Sasuke looked at Naruto and smirked. The Dobi has become really good looking, he thought. He eyed Naruto appraising ly and brushed past him. I have to get to him when he's alone. On entering the dining room, Naruto found Itachi already seated at the head of the table. Naruto-kun, you will be sitting on my right, he said. Serve me first, then Sasuke, Sakura and finally yourself. Don't forget that. Naruto nodded and served his shrimp tempura and sushi to the family of four. There was silence as everyone dug in, pleasantly surprised by how good the food tasted. "Naruto, this is excellent. Where'd you learn to cook like this?" asked a curious Sakura. "You forget I lived alone for all my life." After they were done, Naruto offered to clean up as well. Tired, he finally made his way to his bedroom where he found Itachi waiting for him. "Naruto-kun, there is a lot we have to talk about." Quote, "You talk?" quipped Naruto. Itachi stood silently, yet amusement lighted his eyes. "Yes I do," he intoned blandly. "And we will probably talk tomorrow." Oyasumi. He exited the room. Naruto was tired. He locked the door, turned off the light and promptly went to sleep. So tired was he that he failed to notice a figure quietly enter the room and lightly kiss his lips before it left. Itachi however did and narrowed his eyes in annoyance. The next morning Naruto woke up early and showered. He then made his way to the kitchen to start preparing breakfast. To his surprise, he already found Itachi at the dining table sipping coffee. "Good morning, Itachi-san," he greeted the man. Itachi looked up from the scroll he was reading. "Good morning, Naruto-kun." Naruto hesitated. "I was going to make breakfast, would you like some?" "Yes, please. Oto and Sakura-san have not yet woken up, but you may prepare some for them as well." There was a compatible silence till Naruto spoke up. "How come you're up so early?" "I'm a morning person, Naruto-kun." "Really? So am I, and Sakura is one too." "I know for a fact that Sasuke is not," he laughed. "I'm sure you do," replied Itachi dryly. There was quiet again as he tried to ponder the meaning of Itachi's words. "Does he know?" Naruto wondered. "I think he does. There's no way he would have made that comment otherwise. It was intended to be sarcastic. I'll have to talk to him about it, Ba-chan must have told him." Itachi continued reading in silence as Naruto pondered the meaning of his words. He had known about the engagement since he was 12. Always known that he would be married to Uzumaki Naruto, who was the Kyuubi vessel and the son of the Yondaime. However, thanks to an ambitious father who wanted him to ascend up the ninja ranks as soon as possible, he caught neither hair nor hide of his fiancée while in Konoha. It was only when during his time at Akatsuki that the Uchiha had actually seen Naruto. He had then been taken aback by Naruto's garish clothing but found it to be a genjutsu after turning his Sharingan on. Itachi was mildly impressed Naruto's genjutsu on his clothes had been an undetectable one. He was unsure as to the reason of the genjutsu however and meant to inquire with his fiancée. "He's changed now," Itachi mused. "He's become calmer and more composed." Itachi had always found himself to be all. As a young boy and even into manhood girls and boys had thrown themselves at him left and right. Good looks ran in the Uchiha family and unlike most Uchihas, Itachi did not care for his looks. He had had no time to pursue any romantic interests and he wasn't interested in doing so either. Over the course of his 23 years, Itachi hadn't found a single person whom he was attracted to. Justice came easily to him. Tactics were embedded in his brain. His kunai and shuriken throwing skills were excellent and he could kill with a single stroke of his katana. However, love and lust were some things Itachi had overlooked and dismissed. As a missing ninkum spy, one did not have time to engage in such frivolous matters. So, Itachi did not know love. He simply didn't understand why two people would hold hands or kiss or engage in coupling. He simply thought of it as something he probably would never experience. The only form of love Itachi had felt was for his mother. He could remember her hugging him when he was 3, and smiling at him from the kitchen after he returned home. He had also been fond of his brother at one point in time. Those were the days Sasuke would ask his Aniki to train him and ride on his back. Being tired to the bone from his own training, Itachi had to always refuse. Something he regretted now. He had not loved his father but didn't hate him either. His father had been someone who demanded a lot from him, and Itachi simply met his father's demands. In a single word, Itachi was apathetic. At most times, he saw people as simply the means to an end. In over 10 years of living outside Konoha, Itachi had almost forgotten the very basics of human emotion. Kill and run and kill, were the mantra of those years. A time he now wanted to put behind himself. So why then, when he looked at Uzumaki Naruto, did he feel a tug to his heart? Even the Uchiha had to admit that Naruto was indeed attractive. Probably the first person in all his life whose looks had captured his attention. But Itachi also felt certain possessiveness over the blonde. When his brother planted a kiss on Naruto's lips last night, Itachi had felt rage coursing through him. He was now wondering why. Granted, Naruto was his fiancé and as such, no one else should kiss him. Was that the only reason? Itachi did not know. One thing he knew for sure, he was going to have to marry the Uzumaki. It had been a formal contract and the prestige of the clan would be in question if the terms were not met. Itachi hadn't cared much for the clan as a teenager, but he could now understand a little bit where his father came from. And Itachi had always respected his father. The contract stated that the eldest son of Uchiha Fugaku Uchiha Itachi shall be betrothed and wedded to the son of Uzumaki Urashi, Uzumaki Naruto. By God, that was going to take place. Itachi and Naruto finished their breakfast in silence. The Uchiha instructed Naruto to join him in the study as soon as he could and then glided gracefully out of the room. Sakura then entered and looked surprised to see Naruto already awake. "Naruto, you're becoming a regular housewife," she teased. "A hot housewife though." Naruto rolled his eyes. Sakura is nicer now, he thought dispassionately, as he made his way to the study. "I guess she's happy since she got her Sasuke-kun. I wonder how everything is between the two of them." He went inside the study. Naruto was impressed by it. The room had shelves filled with books and scrolls, collected by the Uchiha family over generations. It was austerely done in red and black, yet had an aura of elegance and honor. Sitting by a small table in one corner of the study, Itachi seemed to exude charisma and nonchalance. Naruto made his way over and steeled himself for whatever his fiancé would throw at him. Itachi got straight to the point. "Tsunade-sama informed me, Naruto-kun," he said, "that you were involved with my brother shortly." "It was shortly after he came back," began the blonde. "In Sasuke's own words, we were merely friends with benefits. One fine day, he started going out to Sakura and everything between us ended. There is nothing going on anymore and you have no cause for worry." "What about in your words, Naruto-kun?" asked Itachi quietly. "How do you feel? To know why I consorted with Sasuke, Itachi-san, you have to understand my life. I grew up in an orphanage. I never had a single person to call my own. Intimacy of any nature was something I longed for yet never received. I did not have the love of a mother or the pride of a father. Children my own age used to run away from me because their parents told them to. I grew up believing I was an unwanted, and this theory of mine was only amplified whenever I observed the interactions of others. I wanted attention and acknowledgement at any cost. I tried to act stupid and played pranks for this very reason. It got me some ridicule, yet I welcomed the fact that people noticed me for something. That has always been my greatest weakness, Itachi-san. My need and hunger for any form of human emotion, for someone to be with me. And Sasuke had offered me that. It was the first time any person had evinced interest in me. I did not know if I loved him and I did not even care. In fact, for a short amount of time I was sure I loved him. He was one of the people who had acknowledged me first. Initially he acknowledged me as a rival, then as a friend. However, he always treated me as below him. Then one day after he came back, he kissed me. We became lovers soon. Looking back, I was probably sick of coming home to an empty bed. Sick of having no one to cook for or talk closely to. So I just accepted the open invitation into his bed. When I discovered he was going out with Sakura, he denied the existence of any relationship between us. To him it was just probably another bed partner. This I know for sure since he had a lover at Sound. I was broken-hearted. I decided to leave the village and sort out my feelings. You know what I found? I realized that I had been a fool. Sasuke was a person I had always respected. I had just indulged my weakness when I succumbed to him. I re-examined my feelings and found them to be entirely platonic. Now, I think of your brother as simply that, your brother and my friend. A friend like any other. I bear him no ill will yet harbor no romantic feelings towards him." Itachi couldn't help it when the corners of his lips curved into a smile. A little part of him was touched that Naruto had responded honestly and shared some of his deepest thoughts with him. "That was a long answer to a short question," he said. Naruto blushed, an action that only enhanced his unearthly beauty. "How do you know Otuto had a lover in Sound?" Naruto explained about his heightened senses. "I can smell no one on you, so I surmise that you haven't had anyone for at least 4 years. My sense of smell is that strong," he finished. Itachi and Naruto continued to partake in conversation for most of the morning till late afternoon. They each found out a lot about the other. Naruto learned from Itachi's constant munching that he had a thing for sweets, especially Pocky. Clan duties and traditions were explained to him, their businesses and bank accounts, stocks and expenditures. The two decided to merge accounts, and spent the rest of the time consolidating their joint finances. The blonde learned that he, as the wife, would be responsible for cooking and cleaning, shopping and other activities. Itachi would be representing them in the council, a task that would fall upon Naruto in case the former was unavailable. Itachi discovered that Naruto's kanji was as elegant as his own and his ideas precise and organized. He found out that his fiancé had a penchant for creating his own jutsus and a soft spot for fuinjutsus and kenjutsu. He was pleasantly surprised when he found out that Naruto held the dragon contract, the highest kind of animal summons possible. "How did you obtain that summon?" he asked curiously. "My grandfather had it. My maternal grandfather, i.e. Sarutobi-sensei, had kept the contract safe. It's actually like a blood thing. The contract had been passed down my mom's family for generations and now it's mine. My sword came from it as the dragons themselves taught me the Ryu no Mai Kenjutsu style. That is supposed to be the oldest style in the world," mused Itachi. "I would like to meet the dragons someday." "Of course," smiled Naruto. "Anytime you want. It's getting late now though. I better be on my way to make lunch." Itachi nodded as Naruto made his way downstairs. The conversation had been an easy one and Itachi had almost been alarmed as to how easy it was. Traditionally, the elder Uchiha was of the type who preferred pondering ideas to himself rather than discussing them with others. Most people were beneath him in intelligence and skill. As such, not many people could relate to him. It was one of the downsides of being the greatest genius of a genius clan. However, it had been the exact opposite with Naruto. Naruto had skillfully drawn him into a thought-provoking discussion that Itachi was caught up in. He had been so engrossed that he had failed to notice time ticking on. The weasel was both surprised and impressed by what he had observed of Naruto so far. Naruto made his way once again into the kitchen. "A place I'm going to have to get used to," he thought, amused. He found Sasuke seated on the small table. "Where have you been, Dobi?" asked the younger Uchiha. "With my fiancé," replied the blonde. Sasuke frowned. "So you are marrying him?" he asked skeptically. Naruto turned to look at his ex-lover. "Yes," he replied simply. "We are under a contract that I have seen myself. It was both our father's wishes." "Screw the contract," interrupted Sasuke angrily. "What is it that you want? Do you actually want to marry someone like my brother?" "What I want or not is of no consequence. People with honor," he emphasized on the word, "do not disrespect their parents' last wishes." Sasuke flushed with anger. "Are you implying that I have no honor?" he asked furiously. "Not as much as your brother." The younger Uchiha clenched his fists. He'd have to have a private talk with Naruto soon. It was 2 weeks since Naruto had been back and he was heading over to Ichiraku for a reunion with Rookie 9, Team Guy and all of their senseis. The reunion had been Sakura's idea and she had organized it. Naruto was touched by her kindness. It was the first time in his life that someone had held a gathering in his honor. The past weeks had been a contradiction of everything Naruto was expecting and he was now a little ashamed. Naruto had reluctantly returned to Konoha, feeling sorry for himself. One Uchiha had dumped him a few years ago and he was now engaged to the other. It didn't help matters when the common perception was that the elder Uchiha was a lot more deadly, colder and haughtier than the younger. However, Naruto had found himself surprised and berated himself for not looking underneath the underneath. Itachi definitely had issues, however Naruto could vouch for the fact that he was the more normal of the two brothers. The interaction between Naruto and Itachi was now bordered of acquaintance and friendship. Naruto was shocked when he found himself sharing a lot more of his insights with Itachi than with Sasuke. He was amazed at the ease with which a conversation flowed between the two of them. Throughout the 18 years of his life there was nothing Naruto had truly wanted more than friends. His first friend had been his first sensei, Kyuubi. However, most people in the village hated Kyuubi and Naruto did not dare tell anyone how easily the demon and its vessel could communicate. His second friend had been Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, and third, Iruka. However, Naruto hadn't removed his protective mask for any of the three. Later on there was an influx of amigos, people who trusted and respected him. However, Naruto could not bring himself to trust any of them. He would give up his very life for any of his friends, however he could never open up to them. Therefore, it was a matter of shock when he had found himself instinctively opening up to Itachi. He genuinely enjoyed spending time with the older Uchiha. Though they hadn't done any real hanging out as friends, Naruto and Itachi had held several intense conversations about their clans and about their lives. And the more he found out about the Mangekyou user, the more he found himself liking him. Itachi's looks only helped. The elder Uchiha practically walked and talked with an elegance born of noble birth. He had aristocratic features, an aquiline nose, eyes of deepest onyx and silky black hair that was always pulled into a ponytail. His jawline was well defined and his angular face was stunningly handsome. The Uchiha was tall, about 6 feet 6 inches, a whole lot taller than Naruto. He had broad shoulders and a heavily muscled body. He was in every sense a male of the highest pedigree. So Naruto found himself thinking more and more of his fiancée these days. He hadn't seen much of anyone except for Tsunade and Itachi. The Kyuubi vessel had made it a point to studiously avoid Sasuke. There was something in Sasuke's eyes that made him feel like a sheep on its way to the slaughterhouse. He sincerely did not like the way Sasuke eyed him but was loath to mention it to Itachi for fear that the elder Uchiha might berate him. As Naruto made his way across town, he actually felt at home in a place that had long shunned him. After 18 long years of being detested, people now smiled at him and wished him good day. It was a pleasant change, thought Naruto as he replied in kind. There were admiring and lustful looks directed at him from all sections of the populace. At one point, Naruto could have sworn he heard some girls giggling about what a fine ass he had. Girls will be girls, he thought, shaking his head in amusement. He never imagined himself to be the type to attack groupies, not that it changed anything about his life. He entered Ichiraku's ancient doors to be greeted by a sea of familiar faces. Everyone he knew was there and waiting for him. He quickly made his way to their table and bent down to kiss Sakura on her cheek. She blushed and greeted him with a warm smile. "We've been waiting so long, Naruto," she scolded gently. "Gomen," he quipped. "I got lost on the road of life." "Troublesome," muttered Shikamaru and then grinned lazily. "Good to see you, Naruto." There were oohs and ahs throughout the table. "Naruto-kun, you look youthful," cried an overly sentimental Rock Lee. "Naruto, you look gorgeous," said Ino smiling. "I agree," said Kakashi leering. "I'm going to gawk at you when your fiancé is not around. You're looking girlier than ever." Naruto arched his eyebrow in an eerie imitation of his betrothed. "But seriously man," said Kiba goggling at him, "you're looking amazing. You really changed a lot in 2 years. I would do you if I didn't have Shika," quipped Tamari. "Hell, I might do you anyways." "Troublesome, we can both do him," added Shikamaru. "Relax man, I'm only joking," he said at the panicked expression on Naruto's face. Naruto suddenly felt as though all was right with the world. "Thanks guys. All of you," he said quietly. They all looked puzzled. "What for?" asked Tenten curiously. "For many things," he replied. "For being friends, I guess. I never thanked you before. For being people I can trust and respect. For always being there and helping out in your own unique ways. And for coming and meeting me today. I'm glad. We'll always be there, Naruto," said Neji with a small smile. "Amen," added Kurenai. "But you only kissed Sakura, Naruto. I think all of us ladies deserve a kiss, no?" Asuma looked at her in disbelief. "Are you flirting with the poor guy?" he asked. Naruto smiled and then gently kissed Ino, Tenten, Tamari, Kurenai, Hinata and Gaara. "Gomen Gaara, thought you were a girl," he said grinning. "Congratulations Hinata-chan on getting together with him." "Arigato Naruto-kun," she replied blushing. "So how is Uchiha treating you?" asked Gaara with his eyes narrowed. "If you're talking about Itachi, he's nicer than I expected, but Sasuke is as much a bastard as usual," he replied, narrowly dodging a playful blow from Sakura at that insinuation. "And you're a doby," retorted Sasuke rolling his eyes. The friends continued to hang around for some time. Most of them noted on how much Naruto had changed. "He's a lot quieter," Sasuke thought, looking at Naruto's pink pouty lips as he laughed politely. "And more well-mannered too." When Choji inquired curiously about this change, Sasuke perked up his ears. But Naruto merely announced that he had finally grown up. He also admitted that a lot of his behavior before was fabricated. At this, Kakashi told him never to put up such a charade again. "For your true self is enchanting, my dear," Kakashi said merrily. Sasuke gritted his teeth at this. "Are you flirting with me, Kakashi?" asked Naruto with a smile. The banter was light and enjoyable. The students and their former senseis had a wonderful time and all of them were enchanted by the new Naruto. He was witty, attentive and charming. Not to mention ridiculously good-looking. Soon, the guests began to leave one by one. Sasuke purposely stayed behind. He would have normally been the first to leave, but he needed to confront the Dobi about their shared past. "I thought he'd be the first to confront me," he mused. Sasuke had decided that he wanted Naruto again. He could tolerate Sakura's presence, but after 2 years of just her, Naruto was like a breath of fresh air. He wondered how they would go about it and already envisioned strong opposition from both Sakura and his brother. Most of the guests had left when Naruto excused himself, stating that he had to prepare dinner for Itachi-san. Sakura had decided to spend the night at her parents' for once. This gave Sasuke the perfect opportunity to tail Naruto. He was sure Naruto knew he was being followed and was puzzled when the blonde refused to do anything about it. Sasuke was slowly losing his patience. The Dobi now knows he's good looking and it's gotten into his head, he thought, rolling his eyes. But I never imagined he'd grow up to be this beautiful. Sasuke grew annoyed when Naruto entered the Uchiha village without as much as acknowledging his presence. He quickly caught up to the Uzumaki and pulled him into his arms. Before Naruto had a chance to protest, Sasuke meshed his lips with Naruto's, seeking that taste of strawberries he had coveted for so long. They were both oblivious of the pair of onyx eyes observing their every move. Naruto furiously pushed Sasuke off him. In his rage, he looked more beautiful than ever. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Sasuke?" he hissed in rage. "How dare you try to kiss me?" Sasuke looked at him in disbelief. "Shut up, Dobi," he retorted. "Why must you be so dumb? Don't you want this? I remember you crying when you found out about Sakura and me." Naruto laughed disbelievingly. "You think I still want you?" he asked. "Why would I ever want you? You're marrying one of my good friends and you're the younger brother of my fiancé." "Those are poor excuses," replied Sasuke. "I've wanted to fuck you since you got back. So stop talking and let's go." Naruto looked at his best friend in shock. "In white and black, Sasuke," he said with gritted teeth. "I do not want to, as you so crudely put it. Fuck you. I'm not interested in you as a lover any longer. I am not attracted to you anymore. Get that through your head. In fact, I pity you. Pity me, Dobi." "And why is that?" answered Sasuke coolly. "And who are you attracted to, Aniki?" Naruto looked at his friend sadly. "First of all, I pity you because you have no character. You're engaged and all you think of is your brother's fiancé? Who do you think you are? No one from a well-respected clan should behave this way. Do you know what you are asking of me, Sasuke? Adultery. That is a sin. And yes, right now I find Itachi-san much more attractive than I find you. He is at least a man of integrity." Sasuke looked at him dangerously. "Are you belittling me, Uzumaki?" he asked silkily. "Yes, because you deserve every word of it and more. Maybe you are forgetting how much pleasure you once enjoyed in my arms, Naruto. You're so naive, you know. I bet you didn't once bed anyone in these 2 years." "No, I didn't and I'm proud of it," answered Itachi's fiancé. "And pleasure at your arms? I don't sleep with sluts. Any pleasure I enjoyed I regret. I'm already ashamed of myself for giving in to you. I gave in to you out of desperation. I didn't love you. I merely confused my feelings with love. And now I'm disgusted with both of us. I never in my wildest dreams thought you would try to make a move on me when I'm engaged. So yes, I pity you and I'm immune to any of your so-called charms. And don't even think of trying to fool me by impersonating your brother. Remember, I have a strong sense of smell." Sasuke looked at him in shock. He laughed humorlessly. "So you don't want me anymore and you're insinuating I'm a slut? Perhaps I should tell my brother how much of a slut you are. How tight you were when I came within you. And here I am ready to even break off my engagement to be with you. Once a Dobi, always a Dobi. Even if you break off your engagement, I will never break mine," said Naruto softly. "And your brother already knows of us. I would have told him anyways, but Tsunade beat me to it. He knew about it and accepted it. He chose to stay engaged to me. Why would I give up that kind of a man for you? Besides, don't you remember, we were just friends with benefits? That's what you told me 2 years ago. I didn't mean it, said Sasuke quietly. I needed Sakura for my clan. I always felt more for you. And remember Dobi, he continued. I will get you. Sasuke then took off fuming and ready to plan his next move. Naruto shook his head and continued home. You may try Sasuke, but as long as I'm engaged or married, I will stay true. And I am stronger than you, he whispered to himself. But it was caught by the keen ears of the onyx-eyed man. And for the first time in many years, a genuine smile broke across Uchiha Itachi's regal face. Itachi stood up and brushed the dust off his hands. Neither of the two had caught him eavesdropping, he was confident of that. He wasn't even in hearing range, but had lip-read his brother and fiancé. His chakra had not been masked but had been blended with the surroundings in a way that was impossible to detect. What he heard had made him angry, happy, sad and proud at the same time. Why is it, oh Tuto, that every time I get something for myself, you wish to claim it too? He thought. I thought it was a childhood thing, but you have transcended it into our adulthood. Shouldn't you understand that what is mine is off limits to you? He continued thinking along the same vein. I have never sought what is yours. I have not even thought about touching your fiancé. At this he paused. Did I just claim Naruto as mine? He contemplated frowning. He ignored the slight shiver that went down his spine at this thought. He is mine, Itachi decided. We are engaged after all, and he held his own ground firmly against my brother. I'm almost proud of the way he dispelled Otouto's arguments and stood firm. Naruto is worthy of my trust. Next, he thought of his brother. The very thought made him clench his fists. He reflected on how Sasuke had dared to kiss Naruto and tried to take him back for himself. He remembered a sickening feeling at the pit of his stomach when he saw them kissing. He had at first assumed the kiss was consensual but felt an overwhelming sense of relief when he observed otherwise. He remembered a white-hot rage as Sasuke had reminisced about Naruto and him in bed. He distinctly recalled wanting to kill his own brother at that point. As Itachi stood analyzing his reactions, he wondered about his feelings towards Naruto. Could it be that I, like him? That I, who previously considered myself all, have now experienced non-platonic feelings towards another? The atmosphere at the dinner table was a tense one. Naruto's rage was palpable and so was Sasuke's. Itachi appeared to be the only calm one, though he had a storm brewing on the inside as well. The food was delicious as usual, but it appeared that none of the three had any appetite. Itachi casually brushed his hand across his fiancé's, and at this, Naruto blushed. Out of the corner of his eye, Itachi noticed Sasuke had tensed up as well. You shouldn't be worried, Otuto. You had your hands all over Sakura-san, sometimes thought Itachi with a dash of anger. He gently took Naruto's soft hand and wrapped it in his much larger one. Is something wrong, Naruto-kun? He asked. Studying his fiancé's slender and delicate fingers, he continued. You look distraught and you haven't eaten anything, smiling privately to himself when he saw just how red Naruto's face was. Well, Itachi-san, Naruto mumbled. He looked into the elder Uchiha's eyes and was touched by the concern he saw in them. I'm just not too hungry. Itachi was somehow miffed that Naruto had passed it off, but he maintained his impassive countenance and released his fiancé's hand. Was he blushing because he minded me holding his hand or because he liked it, he asked himself. What about you, Otuto? He asked Sasuke, who was now glaring at him angrily. I'm not hungry either, Sasuke spit out. Itachi raised an eyebrow, but he was raging inside. Otouto is making such a big deal when I touch what is mine. He thought incredulously. There is a limit to stupidity. After eating dinner, Naruto took his and Itachi's plates to the sink and started to wash them. Dobi, take mine too, called Sasuke, annoyed. He was angry with Itachi for touching Naruto and Naruto for letting him. Do it yourself, replied Naruto coolly. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Why won't you do it? Because I have no obligation to. Naruto answered, looking at him. Sasuke fumed. Itachi quietly exited the room and made his way upstairs. Funny, he thought, how his feelings towards Naruto had changed over a week. First there was apathy, then a slight attraction, and now concern? It was a novel experience for the stoic Uchiha. He latched his door and took up a scroll to read. A few minutes later, there was a knock. Itachi opened the door to find Naruto in the landing. "May I come in, Itachi-san?" he asked politely. Itachi opened the door and beckoned him in. "Itachi-san," asked Naruto hesitatingly, "if I tell you something I hate about your own brother, will you believe me?" "Depends on what it is, Naruto-kun." Naruto took a deep breath and narrated the tale of how Sasuke had approached him and what he wanted. In the end, he looked at the Uchiha pleadingly. Itachi remained dispassionate, though he was very much enjoying himself. "Are you sure you have not feelings for Otuto? For if you do, he is quite right. You shouldn't get married to me in that case. The contract does state that, you know." Itachi stated this quite casually, but his heart was beating quite fast. What if Naruto genuinely had no feelings towards him? Blue eyes flashed. "Itachi-san, I have already told you once and I reiterate. I have no more romantic inclinations or feelings towards Uchiha Sasuke. I swear this on my dead father." "Prove it." "What? How?" asked Naruto confused. "Prove to me that you have no feelings for my brother, Naruto-kun. And you can do this by kissing me," stated Itachi. Naruto gasped. Itachi waited emotionlessly. "Well?" he asked. The blonde moved closer to his fiancée till their faces were mere inches apart. He looked into Onyx's eyes that stared back just as intently. Naruto then shyly tilted his head up and gently pressed his lips against Itachi's. It was magic, Itachi thought as he felt Petal's soft lips rubbing against his. Suddenly the pair of lips separated from and blue eyes looked into him, eyes that were full of coy curiosity. Itachi gasped as Naruto nibbled on his lower lip. Naruto took the opportunity to insert his tongue into the Uchiha's mouth. He explored his fiancée's cavern, running his tongue across the top, bottom and grazing the teeth. His tongue then met the Uchiha's own and both of their tongues danced sinuously. After a few minutes, Naruto broke apart, panting. The two stared at each other. The kiss had been a passionate and heartfelt one that sucked the very life out of Itachi. This was a new feeling to him and he couldn't wait to re-experience it. "More," whispered the Uchiha huskily and pulled his fiancée towards him. This time Itachi took the lead. He wrapped his hands across Naruto's slim waist as his lips met the others. Naruto's hands held onto the Uchiha's shoulders as their tongues clashed once more, the Uchiha dominating this time. Itachi explored every nook and cranny, every corner and crevice of that exquisite mouth. "Naruto tastes like strawberries," concluded the still logical part of him. "And something more. In a strange way, he tastes of spring and freshness. A taste I can never grow out of." When Naruto tried to pull away, he understood that his fiancée had run out of air and broke the kiss. The blonde blushed when he realized that their arms were still wrapped around each other and Itachi just stared, his mind working overtime to fully process every spice and flavor, every texture and detail of the kiss. He ran his hands across his fiancée's face, admiring the flawless peach skin. Naruto smiled shyly at Itachi. "Do I prove my case?" he asked. "Yes," he was answered just as softly. He sighed and then leaned against his fiancée. He tucked his head into Itachi's neck and ran his arms along the Uchiha's well-built back and shoulders. He purred in contentment as Itachi tightened his arms around his waist and pulled him onto his lap. They lay in silence for about 5 minutes, before Naruto shyly titled his head once more. He gently locked his lips with the Uchiha's and whispered, "Oyasumi." Naruto then snuggled tighter into his fiancée's arms and dropped off to sleep. Itachi was wonderstruck. For the first time in his life, an odd feeling of peace and contentment came over him, which was amplified every time he glanced at the angel in his arms. He was afraid to breathe, fearing that Naruto might wake. After silently observing his blonde for a few minutes, he arranged the both of them in a more comfortable position and pulled the blankets over them. He fell asleep before he knew it. It was around 6 when the Uchiha got up, almost 2 hours later than his usual time. He frowned, before feeling something moving against him. He raised his hand to feel the velvety strands of blonde hair and was surprised at how soft they were. He continued running his hands gently through them when he noticed a pair of bleary blue eyes looking at him. Naruto blushed when he realized how close they were. "Do you always blush so much, Naruto?" asked the man opposite him. Naruto made a face and childishly stuck his tongue out. "Hey, you didn't call me Naruto-kun," he exclaimed. "We don't need to use honorifics when we know each other more. So I can just call you Itachi?" "I don't see why not," said Itachi amused. And by the way, I was also present last night, when you and Otuto were yelling at each other. Naruto grew pale at this. You were there? Oh no, wait, why didn't you tell me? He demanded, pouting. I am telling you now. Humph. They lay in silence for a few more minutes, before getting up to shower. So are you going to be sleeping with me from now on, Naruto-kun? Asked a secretly delighted Uchiha. Yes, you are marrying me, Itachi, replied a red-faced Uzumaki. Well, shift your belongings then. And we're meeting the Hokage today to go over wedding plans. Naruto nodded. He went over to his own room and decided to take a quick shower before preparing breakfast. Last night was nice, he thought to himself. Itachi made me feel so good. He met a passive Sasuke at the table. Sakura had already gotten breakfast started, but both of them appeared to be in a bad mood. Breakfast was a short and uncomfortable affair, after which both the couples went over to Tsunade's office. The Godem greeted them with an amused smile. It was decided that the elder Uchiha and Naruto would get married first, and Sakura and Sasuke would follow 6 months later. Are both of you okay? You seem to be in a bad mood, Sakura asked Naruto when they exited the office. The pink-haired girl smiled wanly. It's nothing, Naruto. Sasuke and I just had a minor disagreement. Both of you many continue to the house, Sakura-san, Itachi suddenly added. Naruto and I will follow you later. Itachi took his fiancée's hat in his and led the both of them down a different path. Sakura sighed wistfully as she looked at the duo. They made a fine picture. Sasuke was staring at them as they left, his jaw set firmly. I wonder what his problem is, thought Sakura crossly. I'm going home, Sasuke-kun. Are you coming? Later, he replied absent-mindedly. He decided to follow his brother and Naruto as they walked by a road that was lined with cherry blossom trees. Foolish Otuto, whispered Itachi. Naruto looked at his fiancée mischievously. Itachi looked back at him warily. Let's give him a show, shall we? Asked the blonde. Without waiting for an answer, Naruto suddenly stopped walking. He turned to face Itachi and put his arms on the Uchiha's shoulders. He then leaned upwards and joined their lips. Itachi didn't want to take advantage of their situation, but the feel of Naruto's lips on his dispelled any arguments. He complied and thrust his tongue into Naruto's mouth. He put his arms around Naruto and drew his blonde closer to him. They kissed hungrily, ensconced in each other's arms. Itachi could feel heat gathering in his body and pooling up in his groin. He instinctively thrust his hips against Naruto's. Naruto moaned into the kiss and thrust back. They continued grinding against each other and kissing, till Itachi decided it was better they stopped before he came. He reluctantly broke off the kiss. Naruto looked disappointed but understood. They continued walking down the path, this time hand in hand. Itachi grew annoyed when Sasuke persisted in following them. He suddenly halted. Come out, Otuto, he commanded. Sasuke came out with trembling with anger. Itachi raised a perfect eyebrow. Why so angry, Otuto? He asked blandly. You know damn well why, Itachi, was the angry reply. No, I do not. I know that you slept with my fiancé and stopped doing so when you became interested in Sakura-san. I know that he cares for you no more and that you are financed yourself. I do not understand the reason for your present unrest. The only reason I broke up with him was that he's male and cannot bear children. It was for the good of the clan. Exactly. So now for the honor of the clan, I am to marry him. Kindly trouble us no more. Don't you understand, Itachi? Sasuke replied angrily. I don't care for the clan anymore. They always favored you more anyway. Shut up, Sasuke, hissed a blonde-haired shinobi, eyes flashing with anger. You know something? I can actually bear children. The Kyuubi in me makes it possible for me to do so. But I never told you. Do you know why? Because I didn't care enough for you. If I did, then I might have mentioned it when you left for Sakura. But I didn't, because I never actually loved you. I just accepted you. Get that through your thick head. Sasuke stood shocked. You can bear children? He asked incredulously. Naruto sighed. Yes, he answered. It is because all demons are androgynous. Kyuubi can create a womb of chakra and I can get impregnated. I'm sorry I didn't mention this before, Itachi. Then, why didn't you when we were together? First of all, we were never together. Secondly, Kyuubi never liked you, said Naruto simply. Leave Otuto and do not bother us, ordered Itachi. With a look that spoke of hurt and hate, Sasuke left. I'm sorry, Itachi. I should have mentioned it earlier. It just slipped off my mind, apologized Naruto. Don't worry this time, but such details are important. Do not forget to mention significant facts like these. Itachi looked at his fiancée wonderingly. I didn't think I would be able to have children of my own. Naruto flushed. Yay, well, you get a man and a woman, I guess, he joked. Itachi gave the barest indication of a smile. He then told Naruto to close his eyes and transported them somewhere. When Naruto opened his eyes, he stood staring at the sight before him. It was a beautiful lake, with waters so clear that the pebbles at its bottom could be seen. Flowers of all kinds and colors grew at its banks and birds and butterflies flitted merrily. It was one of the prettiest places Naruto had laid eyes on. I used to come here whenever I was tired or angry, stated Itachi silently. Thank you for showing me, Naruto replied, hugging the Uchiha. Unused to such shows of affection, Itachi returned the hug, albeit stiffly. You know, you are so different from Sasuke. Itachi snorted in amusement. And how are we different, Naruto? Enlighten me? Naruto looked at his fiancée with a tender smile. You're a whole lot nicer and easier to talk to. I've known Sasuke for so long, yet all we do is insult each other. I've never had a decent conversation with him. Talking to you, on the other hand, is a pleasure. And then, your hair is longer and silkier. I can run my fingers through it forever. Your eyes are different too. His have a tinge of gray in them, yet yours are fully and wholly black. You're taller and stronger. You take better care of me. You taste like mint and he tastes like apples. And then, finally, I respect you lots more. Itachi looked at his fiancée's beautiful blue eyes and pulled him into his arms. They kissed hungrily, tongues engaged in a battle of dominance that Itachi won. As he explored Naruto's mouth, the Uchiha ground his hips against his fiancée's. Itachi could feel himself hardening, and every time he rubbed his groin against his blonde's a fission of pleasure coursed through him. They continued rubbing against each other, crotch against crotch, their thrusts becoming faster and more urgent. Itachi couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed his blonde by the hips and pounded into him forcefully. Naruto's moans only goaded him on, and with a final thrust, they both came in their pants. Itachi looked at his blonde. Face flushed, lips slightly open and eyes shining. He made a breathtaking picture. The Uchiha felt a burst of possessiveness. From now on, you are mine. My property, he whispered. No one else should or touch you. Possessive, aren't we? Teased Naruto. I liked that, he added shyly. I liked it too, replied Itachi, lazily kissing his fiancée. He then picked up Naruto and walked towards the Uchiha mansion. When they entered, they were greeted with looks of surprise. Aren't the two of you getting along well? Asked a leering Kakashi. None of your business, senpai, replied Itachi coolly. What are you doing here, if I may ask? So rude, Uchiha. Kakashi pouted. The five of us just thought to pay your soon-to-be wife a visit, he continued, gesturing at Neji, Shikamaru, Kiba, Gaara and Ino. I guess he's doing very nice, you carrying him and all. Kawaii, shrieked Sakura. Naruto blushed. He'll be right down after we shower, said Itachi politely. Showering together, are we? Itachi glared at Kakashi, his Mangekyo Sharingan activated. Everyone gulped and stayed silent. He's even scarier than Gaara, muttered Ino, shivering. But so handsome. The two of them look really nice together. It looks like they're getting along quite well, mused Neji. This being an arranged marriage and all. Naruto looked happy, added Shikamaru. Who wouldn't? I mean, he's in Uchiha Itachi's arms. Not that I would mind being in Naruto's arms, said Ino. Naruto came down freshly showered and mentioned that Itachi was up reading. He then made them some lunch and they were amazed at what a good cook he was. As Rookies and Kakashi made their way home, they agreed that their fears for the couple were unfounded. However, they had also observed Sakura's slightly down attitude and Ino resolved to talk to her. Konoha was abuzz with the latest wedding that would take place. Two of their most high-profile ninjas would be getting married in a week. Uzumaki Naruto would become the wife. Some shuddered to say it, fearing that the Uzumaki would beat them up, the head of the Uchiha clan. Naruto, being a generous person, had invited the entire shinobi community and most of the civilians. The event was designed to be one of massive proportions and would be officiated by the highest office of Konoha itself, the Godem. The daimyos and royals of the Fire Country had also been invited. The organization of the wedding was mostly taken care of by Naruto, Neji and Hinata. The long-standing rivalry of the two clans had now been forgotten. Most of the Hyugas were helping with the Uchiha wedding in one way or the other. To Itachi, the past few months had been some of the better times of his life. He had always known he would get married to Naruto, but reality had been kinder than expected. So far, the duo had gotten along splendidly. They had had their minor disagreements and skirmishes, but these only served as a means of understanding each other. Looking back, the Uchiha could admit that he had been lonely for most of his life. Then, he had not understood the concept of loneliness. As a teenager striving to reach the demands of his father, he did not have time to appreciate the subtleties of life. As a 13-year-old who was abruptly thrown into adulthood with the demise of his parents, all he knew was anger and hate. As a spy for Konoha in an organization of S-class criminals, all he knew were the tricks of survival and information gathering. All of his life, he had worked and slaved for the clan and for his village. Just accepting his missions and fulfilling them. Emotions other than anger and hate were a liability in the lonely world of spies. In fact, he had never experienced any other emotions. The marriage was initially treated by Itachi as another of those missions that were his to accomplish. Except that this would be a lifelong one. To respect his dead father and to prove to the rest of the council that the Uchiha clan does not go back on its word, it had to be done. When he initially laid eyes on Naruto, something within him responded to the blonde. It was the first time he had noted that someone was attractive, the first time he had actually enjoyed talking to someone. He felt different, and he knew enough about the world to categorize the different emotion as something other than anger, hate, or the type of non-platonic feelings towards his mother and brother. After he had interacted more with the blonde, Itachi was far from disappointed. Naruto was a mixture of maturity and childishness, a combination of fun and seriousness. So far, he had performed all of his duties to both the Uchiha and Uzumaki clans sedulously. He had lightened Itachi's workload and been both a welcome distraction and a pillar of support. Itachi and Naruto had also sparred in good spirit a couple of times. Not only was it a good workout, but Naruto had been able to keep up with him, an achievement not many could claim. In fact, Itachi had been stunned when Naruto had gotten out of his Mangekyo. Flashback. It was about 6 p.m. in the evening and the air was literally humming with killing intent. The clang of katanas sounded continuously as Uchiha Itachi and Uzumaki Naruto exchanged blow after blow. Their spar had caught the attention of most of the village's shinobi due to the amount of chakra that was used. As such, they were battling witnessed by an audience of more than 200 ninjas. The Godem and most of the Anbu and Oinen, hunter nin, themselves were present. They had initially started with taijutsu, impervious to the eyes that watched them or the bets that were made. One of the characteristics of the Sharingan is its ability to view things before they happen. Naruto-kun. It is because of the trail your chakra leaves in the air. However slight that trail is, my eyes can pick it up and extrapolate it to predict your movements beforehand. That can be an advantage and disadvantage. For me, it is nothing but an advantage. Do you know why? The Sharingan sees, but it is the body that adapts to the information it receives. Most people cannot react instantaneously, but I have trained in such a way that my body will respond immediately to my eyes. Thus, speed is my forte. You are not faster than me, Itachi stated as everyone listened raptly. Naruto smiled. That may be, he replied calmly, but you are talking to the son of the Yellow Flash. I can land a hit on you faster than you say Sharingan. Naruto's hands blurred through a sequence of seals. Here Ishin, flying thunder god, he shouted as Itachi activated his bloodline. Naruto then disappeared in a streak of light similar to the Yondaime's. He had been right. It had taken most of Itachi's skill to match Naruto's raw speed. They exchanged blow after blow before breaking apart and panting heavily. They continued onwards to ninjutsu. Lightning and fire, earth and water, wind and summoning. Every kind of jutsu had been exchanged and either avoided or dealt with. Itachi's Kaden had met some ingenious Suiden jutsus from Naruto. Naruto's Rasengan had drawn with Itachi's K's no Yaiba, blade of wind. They even moved on to summoning, the Uzumaki having summoned a medium-sized dragon and the Uchiha a wolf. The blonde then pulled out his sword, and the duo had a fierce kenjutsu battle while their summons fought simultaneously. I must commend you, Naruto, for keeping up with me for so long, Itachi said. I'm going to kick your ass, Uchiha, retorted Naruto, and most of the shinobi chortled. Itachi smirked. I'm amused. He activated the Mangekyo Amaterasu, he intoned calmly. Black flames broke out at the edge of Naruto's robes and he had to pull a split-second Kawarimi in order to avoid getting burned. The Amaterasu flames continued to chase Naruto. The blonde then surprised all present by summoning a black hole that sucked the flames in. Itachi looked on impassively. From here on, it becomes a game of the mind, Naruto, he said. Then, genjutsus were exchanged. For all his supposed weakness at genjutsu, Naruto proved extraordinarily efficient at detecting them and even cast in a few of his own. He seemed to have inhuman stamina, but the Uchiha was tired. Suinkomi, he uttered, and all those present gasped in surprise. Isn't that a bit too severe to use on your future fiancé? Murmured Tsunade to Jiraiya. However, most of the shinobis heard and agreed. Remind me never to mess with Itachi, whispered Kiba to Shino. If he uses that on Naruto, he'll use it on anyone. Naruto, said Itachi, bringing everyone's attention back to the battle. You are now in the world of the Mangekyo Sharingan, the Suinkomi world. You can't get out of this genjutsu. In this world, I control time and space. I could torture you, he continued, if I had reason to. Naruto was silent for some time. I'm going to get out of it, he stated. That's impossible. No one has ever done that, said Itachi disbelievingly. I don't do impossible, Itachi. Naruto then brought his hands together in the familiar position of the chakra-gathering seal. Waves of blue chakra emerged, their tendrils curving onto the Uzumaki's torso. Naruto concentrated deeply. Suinkomi Kai, he shouted. The genjutsu world disappeared as everyone gaped in amazement. Itachi was momentarily shocked. However, Naruto had expelled a massive amount of chakra in doing that. He fainted and fell, but was caught by Itachi. The Uchiha then scooped his fiancée in his arms and stared at the angelic face. Placing a kiss on his forehead, he then transported the two home. Everyone behind broke into excited whispers. Flashback ends. After that, Itachi had developed a certain amount of respect for his fiancée. Naruto had repeatedly proved himself, and Itachi knew that if anyone was worthy of being his spouse, Naruto was. He considered himself lucky in a way. The blonde made him think, made him fight, and made him feel. Itachi had never felt so alive, so intense as he did when he kissed or touched Naruto. Sparring did not come close. He was deliriously happy when Naruto had frankly rejected his brother, though it would have ended his mission. He was now extremely possessive towards the blonde. Naruto's good looks had garnered a lot of attention and appreciation from both the men and women of the village. However, the admirers had to back off from the wrath of his Mangekyo Sharingan. Speaking of admirers, Sasuke had temporarily backed off, though Itachi thought he was planning something. He knew Naruto could take care of himself, but for the first time in his life, Itachi had a precious person. He would make sure nothing would happen to his blonde. The Uchiha got out of the shower. Nothing physical has happened between us since that time at the lake, he mused. They had both been too busy. Itachi had 10 years of clan work to bring up to date and Naruto had a wedding to plan. Most of their nights were spent alone in work, and if they did happen to share the same bed, they would drop down extremely fatigued. The Uchiha removed the towel around his waist and started drying out his shoulder-length hair. The door was suddenly flung open and Naruto entered panting. Itachi, there are some details He trailed off, noticing his fiancée's nudity, and blushed furiously. Itachi smirked. Don't tell me you've not seen a naked man before, Naruto. In fact, you've seen one who looks just like me, he continued. Naruto immediately tensed and Itachi bit his mouth, realizing that it was the wrong thing to say. He sighed and made his way over to his fiancée. Come here, he whispered and took Naruto into his arms. I shouldn't have said that. Sometimes I get really possessive of you and hate Otuto for what he did. Don't hate Sasuke because of me, replied Naruto quietly. And it's okay. He ran his hands down Itachi's chest. I like that, said Itachi huskily. Naruto smiled. He decided to tease his fiancée a little bit. Itachi had a body to dream for, and his thing was a lot bigger than Sasuke's. Thinking of that, Naruto blushed again as he noticed his fiancée looking at him. Do something, murmured Itachi. Naruto cocked his head to one side. Do what? Anything, answered the Uchiha. Just, use your imagination. Naruto smirked. He knew exactly what to do. Almost 3 months together and all we've done is some kissing and grinding. That's going to change, right now, he thought to himself. Naruto kissed Itachi tenderly on his lips and then brought his mouth to the Uchiha's neck. He began sucking vigorously as he discovered various pleasure spots that he filed away in his mind for future references. He bit harshly down at a particularly sensitive spot, drawing blood. Itachi exhaled in pleasure as Naruto then soothed the spot by licking it gently. After gazing into black eyes that stared at him in need, Naruto bent down and took one of Itachi's S into his mouth. He licked it and kissed it, bit it and squeezed it, till it became stiff. He did the same to the other. He continued his journey down the Uchiha's chest, alternating between biting and kissing. He dipped his tongue into Itachi's navel and twirled it around. He then stood face to face with Itachi's member. It was almost painfully erect, engorged and pulsating. Naruto unconsciously flushed. He ignored the member and brought his face to Itachi's toes. The Uchiha hissed angrily at this and tried to pull Naruto back up. The blonde shook himself free of the grasp. Behave and I'll give you what you want, he whispered into Itachi's ear, licking the lobe sensually. Itachi moaned with disapproval but let go. Naruto then transferred his attention downward, and sucked on the Uchiha's toes. He licked his way up long pale legs, marveling at how muscular and finely shaped they were. He bit gently along Itachi's inner thigh till he once again reached the stiff member. The blonde then wrapped one of his hands around the Uchiha's manhood as Itachi thrust into his hand. Naruto held down Itachi's hips with one hand and looked into eyes of the deepest obsidian. He kissed his fiancée gently on the lips as their eyes met, one pair in wonder and lust and the other in affection. Liked my imagination? He asked the Uchiha once the latter had removed himself. Itachi looked at his blonde and kissed him, wanting to taste himself in that mouth. Yes, very much, he replied. Let me return the favor. You really don't need to, smiled Naruto. Itachi frowned. You don't want me to? Of course not, but you don't need to feel obligated to. Itachi rolled his eyes as he prepared to pleasure his blonde. After another 10 minutes, they lay sated in each other's arms. You should catch me out of the shower more often, Itachi whispered. Naruto smiled tenderly. Yes, I should. I haven't been so close to another person before, Itachi continued. Neither have I. The Uchiha stared at him. I don't want to bring it up once again, but you had a lover once. No, I had a friend with benefits. I think I've slept more nights with you than he, and we've been together for only half the time. Sasuke just took what he wanted and what he wanted was a lay. We never talked, like you and I are doing now. So you like me better? Asked Itachi jokingly. By a long shot, Ida-chan. What did you call me? Asked the Uchiha disbelievingly. Ida-chan. I think it's a nice name. Don't you? You know, you're the only person I would permit to call me that, Itachi said. Naruto only smiled and glomped his fiancée. As the duo proceeded downstairs, they heard the sound of raised voices. Don't you honestly care? Sakura yelled. No, I don't care about you, you slut. Sasuke answered coldly. You're the one who throws herself at me. What happened? Asked Naruto as they made their way in. Sasuke was silent for a moment. Why don't you ask Naruto, Sakura? I slept with him before dating you. He intoned. There was a shocked silence. No, Sakura whispered. Tell me it's not true, Naruto. Naruto was silent. I only came to you because I assumed Naruto was unable to have kids, Sasuke continued. Sakura started sobbing and then rushed out of the house. Itachi had had enough. He suddenly appeared behind Sasuke and put a kunai against his neck. Oto, this is too much. Keep your personal problems out of my life, he hissed. Do not bring up my fiancé among the both of you, it does not concern you, he hissed. The elder Uchiha withdrew the kunai, leaving a thin trail of blood that trickled down the younger's neck. I don't love her, Sasuke suddenly admitted. I shouldn't marry her. Itachi was silent. It's up to you, he offered. But refrain from bringing Naruto into your arguments. I don't think you should do that, Sasuke, Naruto piped up. You see, Sakura's pregnant. I've been a fool, thought Haruno Sakura as she viewed the hues and shades of her life. I should have guessed, Naruto and Sasuke always seemed closer than just friends. Recently they had grown apart and Sakura suspected their dual engagements were the reason. Naruto had suddenly left for a 2-year mission and she suspected that it had something to do with Sasuke. He's so good looking now. I sensed Sasuke looking at him strangely a couple of times but thought nothing of it. I merely assumed he was insecure about his brother getting married. Sakura sighed as she answered the door. Naruto and Itachi were outside. We need to talk, Sakura, Naruto said gravely. She just stood aside as the duo entered. Naruto began explaining the details of his affair with the younger Uchiha. So you see, Sakura, he cheated on me with you. I assumed he'd be happier with you since you sincerely loved him. But I couldn't stand by and watch it all. That's exactly why I left, to give both of you a free rein. But, he continued, I'm marrying Itachi now and I have no feelings for Sasuke. He already confronted me and I told him so. Why didn't he tell me before? Sakura whispered. I don't know, Naruto admitted. But Itachi knew and we've already spoken about it. Sakura was silent as she mulled over things. She knew that none of it was Naruto's fault. He had even stepped out of his way for her by simply leaving. Yet, she felt a slight bit of resentment towards him. Why must he love you so much and not me? She murmured. When I care for him so much. Naruto laughed bitterly. Oh, it's not as though he cares for me. Do you know that he had a lover in Sound before me? I was just a fuck toy. He's just mad that I'm completely over any feelings I had for him. Sakura's eyes widened. He had someone in Sound? Yes. He's been lying to me all along, she realized. Naruto and Itachi looked at each other. What are you going to do, Sakura? Asked Naruto. I know you're pregnant, she gasped. How do you know? I haven't told anybody. I can smell it on you. Naruto put a hand on her shoulder. I should just abort the baby, she said bitterly. Itachi narrowed his eyes. That, Sakura-san, is not permitted. It is against clan rules. Naruto looked at his fiancée. I think she has a right to do what she wants, Itachi. No, Naruto. Abortion is forbidden. It is not allowed in the Uchiha clan. Naruto frowned. He didn't completely agree with his lover. Well, you and Sasuke should talk it out. Why don't you come home with us? He asked. Sakura nodded and the trio made their way home. As they were walking, Itachi took his blonde aside. Naruto, I don't think we should interfere in their matters. In fact, I want you to keep silent. I don't care if Otuto and Sakura-san are together or not, but the growing child should definitely not be harmed. Isn't that Sakura's decision, Itachi? Asked Naruto. She's the one who's going to be providing for the child for the next 9 months. Itachi frowned. Just do as I say. Naruto's eyes flashed. You don't own me, Itachi. I have a mind of my own. He said angrily. Well, then use it. Itachi replied coolly. A life shouldn't be cut off because of mere comfort and pleasure. An abortion is preposterous. Naruto was quiet for a second and then sighed. We don't need to argue because of their problems, he said, but I still adhere to my opinion. When they reached the house, an agitated Sasuke was waiting for them. As soon as he saw Sakura, he grabbed her and delivered a stinging blow across her face. Sakura reeled backwards, her eyes filling up with tears. Naruto lunged forwards, ready to scream his innards out, but Itachi laid a warning hand on his arm. Oto, he started. That is no way to treat a pregnant woman. Especially one who is pregnant with your child. Shut up, Sasuke screamed. Don't lecture me on what I should or should not do. For 10 years of my life you were absent. You have no right. Urusei, Sasuke, said Naruto in disgust. Don't talk to him like that. This is a new low, even for you. You too, Naruto? Asked Sasuke in disbelief. I don't want the child. You should not do that, stated Itachi. According to our clan laws. Oh, shut up, Aniki, said Sasuke sarcastically. Do you honestly want a pink-haired freaky son? How could you, Sasuke? Said Sakura tearfully, after all I've done for you. You've done nothing. I owe you nothing. Sasuke coldly replied. I still love you, you know. Sakura admitted. We could make this work. Sasuke looked at her coldly. Itachi sighed. He put his hand around Naruto's waist and carried him bridal style. Both of you probably require some time to settle your differences, he stated smoothly as Sasuke and Sakura stared at him. Naruto just looked content. But as the head of the clan and as your older brother, I advise you to not consider abortion as an alternative. We will be upstairs. You can tell us of whatever conclusion you come to whenever you see fit. Sakura and the younger Uchiha looked on as Itachi carried Naruto up the stairs. Naruto had his arms around the elder Uchiha's shoulders and he suddenly raised his head to plant a kiss on his lips. It was a tender kiss, but there was quite a bit of tongue involved. They look like they're in love, realized Sakura with a pang of envy. Sasuke was silent as he came to the same shocking realization himself. "Do you love each other?" he suddenly shouted across the mansion. Itachi and Naruto suddenly came to a standstill as they looked at each other, then turned to look at Sasuke. "Yes," Naruto suddenly admitted as he gazed into Itachi's eyes. "I think I love you, Itachi." Itachi gazed just as intently back. "Me too," he whispered. "Now, come." It was 5 days before the wedding. Preparations had been approaching feverish intensity. Naruto was busy getting his and his fiancée's wedding clothes organized. After a lot of discussing, screaming and fighting, Sasuke and Sakura had decided to keep the baby but had put off getting married. Hence, to the consternation of their friends, there was only going to be one Uchiha wedding. Itachi had been disapproving of this, but Naruto argued that if they married now, it might not even last. Sakura had admitted to the two of them that she still loved the younger Uchiha, but if her love were not reciprocated she would just wait. It was a sad reality, loving a man who was incapable of love. Naruto flushed when he recalled how things had been between him and Itachi. Their random make-out sessions that sometimes escalated to a lot more groping and grinding and maybe, blowjobs. There was a lot of physical attraction, but what made the prospect of getting married to Itachi more and more appealing was the accompanying mental attraction. Sure, there were disagreements, but Naruto and his fiancée had a respect for each other's opinions. They knew when to back off and not let the arguments turn into fights. After being alone for a very long time, it was ironic that both of them understood compromise. Living and loving together had almost been a joyride after being solitary. Naruto had even told Itachi he loved him, a fact he felt made him stronger instead of more vulnerable. For all their intimacy, the duo hadn't gone all the way just yet. Naruto hadn't imagined Itachi to be a moral man, but he was, astonishingly so. He had insisted they wait for the wedding night, a night Naruto looked at with both anticipation and trepidation. 6 p.m. that night. Naruto's hands trembled as he adjusted his kimono. The blonde had chosen his wedding dress himself. It was a silky blue, almost the exact shade of his eyes. The accompanying obi was golden, like his hair. The kimono was stylishly short, ending 2 inches above Naruto's knees. He slipped into his expensive high-heeled slippers. Sakura and Hinata were busy styling his hair while Tsunade was applying eyeliner. The 3 women had insisted on helping him get ready, and with all his persuasive powers, Naruto could not convince them otherwise. It could be worse, Naruto thought. Getting ready alone and with no one to help him would have definitely been worse. Even Itachi was getting help. Hiyashi-sama had politely insisted and Itachi had just as politely acquiesced. Neji, Hiyashi and Shikamaru were helping his fiancée get dressed. And Naruto knew that if he was suffering, the Uchiha must be going through hell. Itachi was always an independent person, but he was too well-mannered to refuse. He wondered how his fiancée would look like and blushed at that thought. "Thinking dirty thoughts, Naruto?" Tsunade asked with a wink. "No. None of your business," Naruto replied, still red in the face. Tsunade smiled at him fondly. "When I first saw you, you were nothing more than an annoying brat. Then, you reminded me of my brother, Nawaki. When you grew older and came back, you reminded me of my lover, Dan. Now, with your maturity and strength and power, there is honestly no one I can compare you with. If I had a son, I'd want him to be just like you." She paused. "How would you feel like gaining a Kasan, Naruto?" Naruto couldn't believe it. Did Tsunade just say what he thought she said? "Yes," she confirmed. "I recognize you and love you as my very own son. Will you accept me as your mother? Will you do me that great honor?" Naruto's eyes filled up with tears as Sakura and Hinata stopped their styling. "Ka-san?" he whispered in trepidation, almost afraid to say it. "Yes, oh my god, yes. Thank you, Ka-san," he said smiling. Tsunade had tears running down her face as well as she embraced her son. "Don't cry too much, you'll get our eyeliner wet," she cautioned. Naruto smiled at 3 of his most precious people. He had come a long way with them. "I love you, all of you," he whispered. Sakura smiled at him tremulously as Tsunade left the room on Hokage business. You know, Naruto, she stated. Sometimes, I wish I had fallen in love with you and not Sasuke-kun. Sakura comforted Naruto gently. You can't help who you fall in love with. Take some time off to examine your feelings. Maybe Sasuke will come around when he sees his son. I wish, answered Sakura wistfully. But till then, there's no one to help me with my pregnancy. Never say that, said Hinata firmly. We're all here, Sakura. If you want help, I can convince Gaara and come down from Suna. Naruto-kun is right here. Itachi and I will be glad to help, Naruto offered. Sakura relaxed as she applied the finishing touches to Naruto's hair. She then applied lip gloss and darkened the eyeliner. Stand up, Naruto-kun, let us examine you, Hinata requested. Naruto stood up to be greeted by admiring and slightly lustful eyes. I think we did a good job, ne Hinata? Asked Sakura. The dark-haired girl agreed. You look really great, Naruto-kun, she stated. In fact, you look prettier than all the girls I've seen, added Sakura with a giggle. Naruto pouted, only causing them to giggle more. When the twin devils left, Naruto finally had some free time to examine his thoughts. It would be time in an hour. In 90 minutes, he would be a married man. Married for the rest of his life, as both he and Itachi had too much pride to emancipate themselves from such a contract. Would he be able to do this? Would he be able to always stand by Itachi and support him? Always love him? Of course I can, thought Naruto firmly, the flicker of doubt vanishing. We're going to be happy. Both of us. We'll have a successful wedding. I promise myself that. The blonde smirked with amusement when he recalled how much more tolerable his life had become. The entire village was now falling over itself to please him. He had become one of its most powerful members. Only Naruto knew how hard-won this respect was. He had fought tooth over nail for it, and worked hard every inch of the way. He was exultant that his efforts had finally paid off. Finally, there is going to be some order in my life, the blonde mused. I'll have a family. Someone to take care of. He hugged himself in excitement and nervousness. Naruto scarcely realized how the last hour of his single life had passed. Gaara, his best man, had arrived to see him before the wedding. You look good, the Kazekage complimented. Naruto smiled genuinely. Thanks for being here, Gaara, he stated. It means a lot to me. I would be a bastard like Sasuke if I didn't attend the wedding of my first friend, was the blunt answer. Besides, the Kazecage's eyes twinkled mischievously. You were my wife's first crush. I'm happy to see you married. Naruto shook his head, laughing softly. Kakashi and Jiraiya entered the door and let out simultaneous whistles. You can always remember I'm yours, Naru-chan. If Itachi ever makes you sad, Kakashi will comfort you, leered the silver-haired Junin. The blonde rolled his eyes, enjoying every moment of the friendly banter and brotherhood he had been denied for a long part of his life. Naruto, said Jiraiya seriously. I'm delighted that you've chosen me to be your escort up the aisle. I never got to do that to your father, you know. It's time. Are you sure you want this? You can always back out if you're not sure. No one will think any less of you. I'm sure, Jiraiya-sensei, said Naruto with conviction. Jiraiya nodded, satisfied. He offered him arm to the tiny blonde. Kit, said a voice in his head he knew all too well. It was the voice that the rest of Konoha hated and he adored. It was his lifeline, the voice that had made sure he survived, the voice that had comforted him, trained him and advised him. Yes, Kyuubi-sama? I'm happy, Kit, said Kyuubi. He sounded wistful and cheerful at the same time. I'm happy for you. With all my demonic instincts, I can find nothing wrong with the Uchiha. He will be a good mate. He will take care of you. Thank you, Kyuubi-sama. Thank you for everything. Naruto was choked with emotion. Outside, Kakashi glanced at him curiously and Gaara put an arm on his shoulder. No problem, Kit. No problem. I'll always be here for you, if and when you need anything. Congratulations in advance. I'll talk to you after everything is over. Thanks again, Kyuubi-sama. Naruto continued walking when he saw someone waiting for him just outside the entrance. Neji? He asked with a smile. The Hyuga smiled affectionately at him, before making a valiant attempt to hug him. Naruto returned the hug, thrilled the normally stoic Hyuga liked him enough to hug him. I tell you, you look good, but I'm sure everyone said that. Neji stated. Yes, they have. There's something you should know, Neji said, suddenly serious. Sasuke is kind of drunk. He didn't help Ojii-sama, Shikamaru and I to dress his brother, he went and got himself inebriated. Oji-sama and Shikamaru are escorting your fiancé, Kiba and Choji are monitoring the catered food. Lee, Tenten, Ino and Guy are playing the part of good hosts. Anko, Ibiki, Kurenai and Asuma are making sure nothing gets too unruly. Sai, Yamato and Iruka are on their way here right now. They were busy arranging the many gifts you received and welcoming the guests of honor, along with Tsunade, Hinata-sama and Sakura. So you see Naruto, you should never feel the lack of a family anymore. Because, all of us are your family. Naruto couldn't believe it, he was the luckiest person he knew to have all of his friends do so much for him. All of his suffering, every bit of loneliness, was worth it. Because the rewards that he was receiving now almost made up for it. And before you ask, Neji continued, Uchiha-sama looks really good in his wedding kimono. Naruto blushed. I don't know how to thank you, he whispered. Who said you need to? Neji answered, you've already done so much for the Hyuga clan. You gave me a sister and an uncle. Naruto, came a voice and he turned to see Yamato, Sai and Iruka. Hey, Naruto, Sai stated, greeting him with a kiss on the lips. Sai, Naruto squeaked, you shouldn't do that, you look too good to resist. The Roots member responded coolly. Naruto, Iruka started, it feels like just yesterday I treated you to ramen. You've grown so much. Not in size, no. Sai interjected. Iruka threw him an annoyed glance. I wish you best in everything, Naruto. May you have all the luck and happiness you deserve in your married life. Naruto smiled tenderly at his former sensei. Arigato, Iruka. You were one of the first people to give me strength. Iruka dabbled furiously at a few stray tears. Kakashi tried to comfort him by putting an arm around him. Yamato coughed politely. Kakashi-san, take your hands off my boyfriend. He stated. Everyone else looked shocked while Iruka blushed. No, wailed Kakashi in dismay. Everyone's taken. I'm not, Sai butted in. The copy nin looked at him with interest. True, he replied, brightening up. While Jiraiya advised him to go for women, Neji rolled his eyes. We should go, Naruto. Everyone else you will meet probably after your wedding. They're busy officiating. The crowd's getting impatient. All the important guests have arrived and every villager and his wife is present there. Yamato stated. Naruto nodded at the former Anbu. It's true, Sai started conversationally. Everyone's dressed magnificently. There's almost as many people as the Kyuubi festival itself. There are even food and game stalls, can you believe it? And performances have also been scheduled with both of you as the guests of honor, of course. You have a mountain of gifts waiting for you. Naruto looked overwhelmed. Don't worry too much, said the ever-silent Gaara. It's all going to go well. We're all here to support you. Quote.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.